Have you ever wondered what you would do if the person you were forced to marry held the fate of someone you loved in their hands? Imagine being trapped in a palace, bound by a curse, and knowing that every choice you make could mean life or death, not just for yourself, but for the ones you care about most. Could you risk everything for love, or would fear control your every move? Welcome, Untamed Hearts. You've returned to Tales by Jenny Moon, a place where the wild waits, where every heartbeat can be hunted, and every touch carries danger. Tonight's story will stir your senses, tempt you with desire, and bind you to alphas, fated mates, and the hunger that never lets go. But remember, every choice has its cost. Mark your presence with the pack. Like, comment, subscribe, share, so the night knows you're here, and the stories know where to find you. Stay close, Untamed Heart. The story has already chosen you. Ashley had always thought that her 18th birthday would be quiet. Maybe she would sneak away to the old willow tree near the river, where the air smelled of freedom, and dream of a future untouched by her stepmother's cruelty. But birthdays in Helena's house were not for celebration. They were for bartering, for chains disguised as duty. The morning sun hadn't even touched the edges of the village when Helena stormed into Ashley's room, her sharp perfume cutting through the air like poison. Her lips curved into the kind of smile that never reached her eyes. "Get up," Helena ordered, her voice flat. "Today, you'll earn your keep." Ashley sat up, clutching the thin blanket to her chest. Her heart thudded with unease. There was always a catch with Helena. Always a punishment lurking beneath the surface. "What do you mean?" Helena's smile deepened, as if she relished the question. "The Alpha King has sent word. He needs a bride. You, my dear, are going to be her." For a moment, Ashley thought she'd misheard. The Alpha King? Rowan? The cursed ruler whose name carried both awe and dread? He was said to be powerful once, invincible on the battlefield, but now, broken, paralyzed. A king feared for what he used to be and pitied for what he had become. Ashley's mouth went dry. "Why me?" "Because you're useless to me otherwise," Helena snapped, "and because the palace will not come asking twice. You're pretty enough for a crippled king, and more importantly, your marriage will keep certain debts from being paid in other ways." Her gaze slid to the doorway where a small figure lingered. Caleb, Ashley's little half-brother, only 6 years old, with wide brown eyes and a face too innocent for the darkness of their home. He clutched a wooden toy soldier, the paint chipped, his small hands trembling as Helena beckoned him forward. "Caleb," Helena said sweetly, though the poison never left her voice, "was caught stealing bread again. The guards want him punished, but I've made an arrangement. Your marriage will save his life." Ashley felt her blood turn to ice. "No." Her voice cracked, sharp with panic. She sprang from the bed, standing between Helena and the boy. "He's just a child. You can't." "I can," Helena interrupted, her tone final. "And I will, unless you agree." Caleb's small voice broke the silence. "Ashley, don't." His lips quivered. "I don't want you to be sad." Her heart shattered. He didn't understand. He never would. He shouldn't have to. Ashley sank to her knees, clutching Caleb to her chest. She stroked his hair, forcing her voice to steady even as tears burned her eyes. "It's all right," she whispered, though nothing about it was. "I'll do it. I'll marry him." Helena's smile returned, cold, triumphant. "Good girl. The carriage leaves in an hour. I suggest you make yourself presentable. After all, you'll be a queen soon." But the word queen tasted like ashes. The journey to the palace was suffocating. Ashley sat in the gilded carriage, dressed in a white gown that didn't belong to her. The fabric was too fine, the bodice too tight, and it felt less like clothing than a shroud. Every bump of the road echoed in her chest like a drum beat of doom. Outside, the villagers whispered and pointed. She caught fragments through the window. That's her, the bride for the cursed king. Poor thing, she won't last a week. Better her than me. Ashley clenched her hands in her lap until her nails dug into her palms. She tried to hold on to Caleb's face in her mind, his trembling smile when she'd promised to return. I'll protect you, she had sworn silently. No matter what happens to me, I'll protect you. But fear gnawed at her resolve. The palace loomed in her imagination, not as a sanctuary, but a predator with marble teeth and golden claws. And at its heart waited Rowan. The palace was everything and nothing like Ashley expected. It rose from the earth like a beast of stone and silver, towers piercing the sky, banners snapping in the cold wind. Guards in dark armor lined the gates, their expressions unreadable. The carriage doors opened, and Ashley stepped onto the marble steps, her legs trembling beneath the weight of her gown. She lifted her chin, forcing dignity she didn't feel. Inside, the palace swallowed her whole. The ceilings arched impossibly high, chandeliers dripping crystals that caught the light like frozen tears. Servants bowed as she passed, their eyes quick and sharp, as though measuring her worth. Finally, she was led into the throne room. There he was, Rowan. The Alpha King sat in a chair carved from black oak, his body draped in a cloak of midnight fur. His frame was broad, powerful, even seated, but his legs lay still beneath him, motionless. His hair was dark as storm clouds, his face sharp with lines carved by battle and time. And his eyes, silver, cold, unyielding, locked on her the moment she entered. The weight of that gaze pinned Ashley in place. It wasn't pity she saw in him, nor kindness. It was calculation. So, Rowan said, his voice deep, resonant, carrying the echo of command. This is the girl. Ashley swallowed hard. Ashley, my king. She forced the words past her dry throat. Rowan's lips twitched. Not a smile, not a frown. Something darker. Barely 18. His gaze slid past her to the guards. Helena sends me children now. Heat flared in Ashley's chest, shame and anger warring inside her. She wanted to speak, to defend herself, but her tongue was heavy, her courage thin. Rowan's eyes returned to her, sharp as knives. Do you know what they call me? Ashley hesitated, then whispered, the Paralyzed King. The throne room fell silent. The air itself seemed to bristle. Rowan leaned forward slightly, the shadow of a cruel smile touching his lips. Good. At least you're honest. His gaze lingered on her face, as though he could peel back her skin and read her soul. And do you know what happens to liars in my palace? Ashley's breath caught, but she said nothing. Rowan's silver eyes gleamed. They bleed. The words hung in the air, heavy, unshakable. Ashley's body trembled, but she forced herself not to look away. The king reclined back in his chair, dismissive yet watchful. Prepare the wedding rites. Tonight the girl becomes my queen. Ashley's heart thundered. Queen. The word no longer felt like ashes. It felt like chains. The ceremony was a blur of firelight and cold vows. Ashley stood beside Rowan, her hand trembling in his, though his grip was steady as iron. The priestess spoke words of union, binding them in the eyes of gods and wolves alike. When it was over, Rowan leaned close, his voice a whisper against her ear, so low no one else could hear. You may have come here as Helena's pawn, he said, but you'll soon learn. No one plays games in my court without paying the price, not even you. Ashley's blood ran cold. The hall erupted in applause, nobles smiling their false smiles. But Ashley's world shrank to that whisper, that promise of danger. And as she stood beside the cursed king, bound to him by law and blood, one truth pierced through her fear. Her life was no longer her own. That night, when Ashley was led to her chambers, she found something waiting on her bed. A single silver chain, broken in half, with claw marks carved into the wood beside it. A silent warning, or a promise. Ashley woke to a world of marble and shadows. The palace was quiet at first light, the corridors empty except for the distant echoes of servants preparing for the day's rituals. The soft click of her slippers on polished stone reminded her how far she had been dragged from the life she once knew. Her stomach twisted with unease as she remembered the night before. The wedding vows, the sharpness in Rowan's silver eyes, the weight of her role as his queen. She tried to tell herself it was only a title, only a duty. But every glance she caught of the king made the lie impossible. Rowan was unlike anyone she had ever met. Even in his paralysis, he radiated power, coiled, silent, and dangerous. His presence alone was enough to silence the palace. And he had silenced her too, in ways she had not yet begun to understand. The servants whispered behind her back as she made her way to the throne room for the morning assembly. Their words floated just above the floor, delicate and venomous. The lamb offered to the cursed wolf. She'll never last here. 18 and already bound to a man who could crush her with one hand. Ashley's cheeks burned, and she held her head high, trying not to flinch. Each whisper felt like a knife pressed to her chest. She had no allies here, no one to protect her from Helena's reach, from the judgment of the nobles, from the weight of Rowan's scrutiny. Rowan sat in his chair as always, waiting, not rising, not greeting, simply observing. His silver eyes tracked her every step as she approached. Despite the opulence of his throne room, despite the gilded tapestries and glimmering chandeliers, there was a chill that clung to him, a presence so commanding that even the air seemed to bend to his will. Ashley paused just short of the throne, unsure of what was expected of her now that she was bound to him in law and name. Rowan's eyes narrowed slightly as if noting her hesitation, but he said nothing. Silence stretched between them, tense and suffocating, until Ashley felt her own pulse loud in her ears. The chamber doors opened and a dozen courtiers entered, bowing and murmuring greetings. Rowan's mouth curved in a subtle, almost imperceptible smile, but his eyes never left Ashley. The courtiers spoke with practiced deference, but Ashley could feel the weight of their judgment. Some regarded her with pity, others with contempt, and a few with curiosity that made her skin crawl. She was no longer just a girl from a small, modest home. She was a symbol, a pawn, a lamb, a tool of politics, a queen in title but untested in every way. Rowan finally spoke, his voice deep and measured, carrying through the high-ceilinged room. Let it be known that this morning, we begin the affairs of the kingdom with the guidance of the queen at my side. Speak when spoken to, act when commanded, and observe above all. Ashley nodded, her throat tight. She didn't yet know what to say or how to act. The word queen still felt foreign and heavy on her tongue. The council meeting began with the usual formality, discussions of taxes, land disputes, and patrols along the northern borders. But Ashley could hardly follow. Her eyes kept drifting back to Rowan, watching him as he listened in silence. Occasionally he would interject, his words sharp and precise, cutting through the chatter like a blade. Each syllable was weighted with authority, even though he did not stand, even though he was said to be paralyzed. One of the council members, an older noble named Varon, whispered something under his breath as Ashley passed by. Rowan's head flicked slightly in his direction, and the man stiffened, bowing deeper than protocol demanded. Ashley realized then that even in his chair, even with his body bound, Rowan's power was absolute. No one dared speak lightly in his presence. By the end of the morning, Ashley was exhausted. She had answered few questions, intervened in fewer, and yet felt as though she had been tested in every conceivable way. As she rose to leave, she noticed a subtle glance from Rowan, an acknowledgement of her presence but devoid of warmth. It unsettled her more than it reassured her. Lunch was served in the private dining hall, a smaller room with heavy curtains and a long wooden table polished to a shine. Ashley sat opposite Rowan, hands folded in her lap. A servant brought dishes of roasted meats, fresh bread, and a variety of fruits, placing them before them with quiet efficiency. Rowan reached for a knife, his movements slow, and deliberate. When he spoke, it was soft, but it carried an edge that demanded attention. "You eat too quickly," he remarked. Ashley blinked. I'm hungry, my king. Patience is necessary. Here, it is survival." She swallowed, unsure whether he was instructing her or warning her. She knew better than to question him. Silence fell again, stretching between them as if the room itself held its breath. She noticed how his hands rested on the arms of the chair, veins standing out beneath pale skin, the faint tremor that betrayed a body tense with hidden strength. Ashley wanted to speak, to ask questions, but each time she opened her mouth, the words seemed inadequate, trivial. Rowan's presence made her feel small and exposed, and yet she could not look away. There was a magnetism to him, cold, dangerous, and utterly compelling. After the meal, she was led on a tour of the palace grounds, not for leisure, but for instruction. She was shown the private chambers, the council halls, the training rooms where Rowan's warriors practiced, and the gardens that stretched like a forest across the palace grounds. The beauty of the place did little to ease her unease. Each corridor, each door, seemed to hold secrets she was forbidden to uncover. Servants and attendants kept their distance from her, bowing low, but speaking in whispers behind their hands. Ashley overheard fragments. "Paralyzed or not, he's still dangerous. The girl doesn't yet know the weight she carries. She'll learn soon enough." Every whisper reminded her that she was surrounded, observed, and measured. And all the while, Rowan's gaze followed her, silent and unyielding. As evening approached, the palace transformed. Torches were lit along the halls, casting long, wavering shadows. The grand hall, where Ashley had taken her vows the night before, seemed colder now, more imposing. The stone walls glimmered faintly in the torchlight, but the shadows seemed alive, stretching toward her as if aware of her presence. Rowan summoned her to the throne room once more, not for ceremony, but for instruction. He had taken it upon himself to guide her in the ways of court life, how to bow, how to speak, how to anticipate the moves of those who would use her as a pawn. "You must observe more than you act," he said, his tone sharp, almost cruel in its precision. "The court is a battlefield. Words are weapons, smiles are shields, and every action, no matter how small, can cost a life." Ashley nodded, absorbing every word with trembling intensity. She realized quickly that Rowan's lessons were more than etiquette. They were survival, and that the survival of herself and Caleb depended on her learning quickly. As the evening drew on, she returned to her chambers, weary beyond words. She sank onto the edge of the bed, hands clasped together, mind racing. Every interaction with Rowan had left her both intimidated and fascinated. The stories of his cruelty were not exaggerated. His calm authority, the way he measured her reactions, and the subtle dominance in his every word and gesture made her pulse quicken despite herself. But there was more than fear in her fascination. She sensed layers beneath the surface, glimpses of something hidden, dangerous yet profoundly human. She did not yet understand Rowan fully, nor did she trust herself to. And perhaps, she thought bitterly, that was exactly what made him so terrifying. Hours later, as Ashley lay in bed staring at the ornate ceiling above her, she reflected on the day. The palace was a gilded cage, the whispers of servants a reminder of her isolation, and Rowan was an enigma she could neither escape nor fully confront. She felt the weight of the title she bore pressing down on her, heavier than any chains Helena might have placed upon her. Yet despite her fear and uncertainty, a small spark of determination ignited within her. She had survived this long, and she would survive here as well. Not for herself, but for Caleb. For the little boy who had stolen her heart without even trying. For him, she would endure the cold, the judgment, and the cruelty of a king who was more than he appeared. And so, Ashley closed her eyes, drawing in a steadying breath. Tomorrow she would face the throne room again. She would endure Rowan's piercing gaze, the whispers of the palace, and the weight of her new title. She did not yet know how the days ahead would unfold, but she knew this. Survival was her first lesson, and she intended to learn it well. The cold of the palace pressed against her, a reminder that she was no longer just Ashley, the girl from a small home. She was Ashley, the queen in name, bound to a king whose power and danger were undeniable. And as she drifted into a restless sleep, she knew that the days ahead would test her in ways she could scarcely imagine. The days in the palace had grown heavier for Ashley. Each morning brought with it the cold formality of court life, the piercing gaze of Rowan, and the whispered commentary of the palace staff. Yet, as much as she tried to immerse herself in the lessons of etiquette and duty, there was something far more pressing in her mind. Rowan. He had grown more enigmatic with each passing day. Though he never rose from his chair, never made unnecessary movements, he seemed to be everywhere, all at once. Ashley noticed it in subtle ways. The way his eyes followed her when she thought he was asleep. The way a servant would suddenly freeze mid-step if Rowan's presence swept through the corridor. The faint sounds of movement echoing down empty hallways at hours when the palace was supposed to be silent. It was during one of these restless nights that Ashley first felt compelled to explore. The servants had long since gone to bed, the torchlight flickering in long shadows across the marble floors. Every sound, the distant clatter of a guard's boot, the muted whisper of wind against a window, seemed amplified in the quiet of the palace. Ashley's curiosity was a dangerous thing. She had been taught, in whispers and half-threats, to observe, to obey, and to remain unseen. Yet the pull toward Rowan's secrets was irresistible. She rose from her bed quietly, wrapping a shawl around her shoulders, and stepped into the cold hallway. The stone walls seemed to stretch endlessly, the shadows bending like living things. At first she wandered aimlessly, following the faintest hints of movement she had noticed before. The palace was vast, labyrinthine, with corridors that twisted and branched in ways that made her doubt whether she would ever find her way back. But the sensation that Rowan was moving somewhere forbidden, propelled her forward. She passed the training halls, their heavy doors locked, the sound of distant metal striking metal faint in her ears. The gardens lay to one side, but the gates were barred at night, their intricate ironwork casting shadows that resembled the fangs of wolves. It was then that she noticed a subtle draft emanating from the far end of a corridor she had never explored before. The door at the corridor's end was different from the others. Heavy oak, reinforced with iron bands, and a lock that gleamed faintly in the torchlight. But what drew her attention more than the lock was the streaks. Dark, jagged, like scratches made by claws or steel. Ashley's heart skipped a beat. She crouched to inspect them more closely, fingertips hovering above the marks. The scratches were fresh, no more than a day old. Her mind raced. What could have made these marks? The stories about Rowan swirled in her head. The whispers of a curse, of battles fought long ago, of a body that had been broken but a mind that remained deadly. Yet these marks were tangible, undeniable. Something or someone had left them here, and it was connected to the king. Her hands trembled slightly as she reached for the door. It was locked, the cold iron of the handle solid beneath her fingers. She pressed her ear to the wood, listening. Silence. Nothing but the faint hum of the palace settling. Yet she could not shake the feeling that she was being watched, that every shadow might conceal a pair of eyes tracking her every move. Ashley's curiosity outweighed caution. She had lived under the strict control of her stepmother for years. She had obeyed, suffered, and endured. But here, in the palace of the Alpha King, she was bound by neither rule nor expectation. Rowan's secrets beckoned her, and she could not ignore the pull. She returned to her chambers that night, but sleep eluded her. Every shadow seemed to stretch longer than it should. Every creak of the floorboard made her heart leap. She considered whether to confront Rowan directly, but the memory of his silver gaze, sharp and unyielding, stayed her tongue. To ask him outright would be dangerous. To watch, to wait, to observe, that was safer. Over the next several days, Ashley moved through the palace with a new awareness. She noted every servant who entered Rowan's chambers, every fleeting shadow, every sudden silence. She observed the door at the end of the forbidden corridor from afar, imagining what lay beyond. Occasionally, she caught fleeting glimpses of Rowan moving in ways that should have been impossible for a paralyzed man. A shift of his hand, a slight rise of his shoulders, the tightening of his jaw as if resisting some internal struggle. One evening, the opportunity presented itself. The palace was quieter than usual. The dinner service had ended, and most of the staff had retired. Ashley crept from her chambers, moving along the familiar corridors with the stealth she had cultivated in years of hiding from Helena's wrath. She approached the locked door once more. The claw marks gleamed faintly in the torchlight. Her pulse quickened. Something, she did not know what, lay beyond that door, and she could no longer resist. After a moment of hesitation, she retrieved a small hairpin from her gown, a crude tool, but often sufficient in her hands. She inserted it into the lock, manipulating it with careful patience. The mechanism resisted at first, then yielded with a faint click. The door creaked open slowly, revealing a darkened room beyond. Ashley's breath caught. The room was unlike any she had seen in the palace. The walls were lined with shelves of strange implements, metal, glass, and wood. Some resembled weapons, others were unrecognizable. The floor was scarred with deep gouges, as if a battle had been fought within these walls. And there, on the stone floor, were the largest and most terrifying clues of all. Streaks of blood, dried and glimmering faintly in the torchlight, alongside the unmistakable marks of claws that could not belong to any human. Her stomach churned and her fingers grazed the edge of a nearby table for balance. Something about the room reeked of danger and secrecy. The air itself seemed to hum with a hidden power, a presence that had not yet revealed itself. Ashley realized then that Rowan's paralyzed form might be a lie, or at the very least a carefully guarded secret. As she explored further, she noticed faint footprints in the dust. Bare, human-like, yet impossibly large. They led to a small alcove in the far corner of the room, where a heavy chest sat. The chest was locked, but the edges were worn, as if it had been forced open before. Ashley's curiosity burned hotter than her fear. She could not resist pressing her fingers to the surface, wondering what horrors, or truths, lay inside. A sudden sound made her freeze. The subtle shift of air, the almost imperceptible click of movement behind her. She spun, heart hammering, but saw nothing, the palace was empty, she told herself, yet the hairs on the back of her neck bristled. Rowan's presence was not here. Or perhaps it was, hidden in the shadows, observing her every move. Ashley forced herself to focus. She had to understand. She had to see beyond the mask of the Alpha King, beyond the cold, commanding exterior, for Caleb, for herself. The knowledge that Rowan might not be the broken man the stories claimed was both terrifying and exhilarating. She spent the better part of the night in the room examining the strange tools, the claw marks, and the traces of blood. Each discovery deepened the enigma of Rowan. Who, or what, was he truly? What had happened to him on that battlefield so many years ago? And why had Helena sent her into his life, knowing the danger she would face? By the time she returned to her chambers, the first rays of dawn were creeping through the windows. Ashley's mind raced, filled with questions and half-formed theories. Rowan was no ordinary man, she realized. He was something more, something dangerous, and possibly something more broken than anyone outside the palace could comprehend. She dressed for the day, her hands still trembling, her thoughts consumed by the forbidden wing and the hidden room. Her resolve hardened. She would learn the truth piece by piece. Rowan might be the Alpha King, but the palace was full of secrets, and secrets were meant to be uncovered. As she walked through the corridors toward the throne room, she passed servants and guards who bowed, but said nothing. Their whispers followed her, faint but persistent. She's too curious for her own good. She'll discover the truth soon enough, The king is no ordinary man. Ashley's lips pressed into a thin line. She did not flinch. She would uncover the truth. She would understand Rowan, the cursed king, the man who terrified and fascinated her in equal measure. And she would endure, no matter the cost. The palace loomed around her like a living entity, its shadows stretching long and secretive. Ashley had stepped into a world of danger and intrigue, and she could feel the pulse of it beneath her feet, in the walls, in the air itself. The forbidden wing was only the beginning, she knew. The mysteries of Rowan's life, his curse and his power were vast, and she had barely begun to scratch the surface. And so, she took a steadying breath, squared her shoulders, and walked into the throne room, ready to face the day. The Alpha King sat in his chair, silent and commanding as always, and Ashley felt the weight of her new reality pressing down upon her. Ashley's mornings in the palace had begun to blur into one another, a rhythm of protocol, observation, and careful restraint. Yet despite the lessons of etiquette and restraint Rowan had begun imparting, a shadow of unease followed her every step. It was not only the weight of the title she bore, nor the whispers of the palace that kept her tense. It was the sense that her life was being pulled into a storm whose direction she could neither predict nor control. Her unease crystallized one morning when a small, folded note appeared beneath the folds of her gown. She had discovered it in her chamber, placed with meticulous care so only she could find it. The handwriting was sharp and precise, each letter etched with the kind of calculated cruelty that Helena was known for. Spy on him. Discover his weakness. Fail. And Caleb dies. Ashley's chest constricted. The note did not demand loyalty. It demanded betrayal. Helena's cruelty knew no bounds, and Ashley had grown accustomed to bending her own sense of morality to survive, but this was different. It was a knife pressed directly against the life of the boy she loved, Caleb. Her little brother's wide, innocent eyes flashed in her mind, and her stomach tightened with panic. He did not deserve the chains of Helena's scheming. He did not deserve to be traded like a piece of property, and yet Ashley could not disobey. Not if she wanted him alive. The palace was quiet, but danger seemed to lie behind every door. Every shadow seemed to stretch longer, every torch flicker more sinister. Ashley moved cautiously through the corridors, the letter pressed in her hand like a talisman of guilt and desperation. She did not speak to the servants. She did not acknowledge the eyes of the guards. Every step was measured, deliberate. Her mind returned repeatedly to the forbidden wing she had discovered days before, to the locked chamber she had been unable to explore. The claw marks, the traces of blood, the sense of raw power. It all pointed to a truth she could not yet fully understand. And now Helena's orders demanded that she enter this world, confront the unknown, and uncover what Rowan was hiding. The night was unusually still. Torches flickered in the hallways, casting long, twisted shadows. Ashley moved silently, guided by the memory of the corridor's twists and turns. The palace was vast, but she had memorized every corner, every doorway, every servant's predictable path. The forbidden door loomed before her once more, its scratches and claw marks a silent warning reminder of the danger that waited beyond. Ashley's hands trembled as she inserted the hairpin into the lock, remembering the technique she had used before. The mechanism resisted, but slowly, painfully, the lock yielded. She pressed the door open, wincing as the hinges groaned under the effort. The chamber was exactly as she had feared and imagined. Walls lined with shelves holding objects of power, weapons of every description, and traces of battles fought within these stone walls. Chains bolted to the floor and ceiling jutted from the walls like frozen metallic serpents. The scent of iron and wax burned faintly in the air. Ashley's eyes darted across the room. Some of the weapons were coated in silver, glimmering faintly in the torchlight. She recognized daggers, swords, and tools she could not name, each placed with a careful precision that suggested they were ready for immediate use. Her pulse quickened. Rowan had not only survived the battlefield, he had prepared for a war no one else had seen coming. The chains caught her attention. Bolted into the stone in deliberate patterns, they seemed more than mere instruments of restraint. They looked ceremonial, protective, even ritualistic. Ashley could not imagine their purpose, but the faint scratches along the iron suggested that they had once held something or someone capable of violence beyond ordinary comprehension. Her curiosity pushed her further. She stepped closer to the largest set of chains, trailing her fingers along the cool metal. The motion echoed softly in the chamber, and she froze. "You shouldn't be here." The words came from the shadows, low, measured, and controlled. Ashley's heart slammed against her ribcage. She turned, expecting perhaps a guard, and instead saw him. Rowan. He was not in the chair where she had left him. He had moved, though she had no recollection of him rising. His form was coiled, like a predator that had been waiting, watching, and studying her every move. The silver of his eyes glimmered in the torchlight, and Ashley felt the same thrill of fear she had felt the first night she had entered the throne room. You can move," she stammered, stepping back instinctively. Rowan's lips curved slightly, a shadow of amusement and warning. "Paralyzed, they say. Helpless. A broken man. The court believes it. You should not." His voice was calm, but the undercurrent of steel made her take another step back. Ashley's mind raced. The chains, the weapons, the claw marks. Everything pointed to a man, or something more than a man, bound here, hiding his true strength. She began, but Rowan's gaze pinned her in place. "You've seen enough to understand that appearances are dangerous," he said softly, each word deliberate. "The world believes me broken. They whisper that I am powerless. They are fools, and so are those who would use me as a weapon without understanding the cost." Ashley swallowed hard, her fear mingling with fascination. She had been ordered to spy, to find weakness, and yet here, in the presence of the man himself, she realized that Rowan's power was not something to be measured in appearances or gossip. It was something deeper, something lethal, something hidden. Rowan stepped closer, the shadows clinging to him, moving as if alive. He did not raise a hand to strike, but the air between them seemed charged with potential violence. Ashley's pulse raced. "You came here because someone commanded you," he said, his voice dropping to a near whisper. "I can feel it. The fear, the hesitation, the need to protect what you love." Ashley did not reply. She could not. The weight of the truth pressed upon her. Caleb, Helena, the palace, Rowan. It was all a web, and she was caught in the center. "And yet," Rowan continued, "you linger. You look, you observe, you question. That is good. Curiosity is a weapon in its own right, but so is obedience. So is caution. Remember that, Ashley. The wrong move in my palace will cost more than you can imagine." He paused, studying her as if weighing her worth. "Do you understand?" Ashley nodded, though the tremor in her hands betrayed her inner turmoil. I understand, my king." Rowan stepped back, settling into a shadowed corner of the room. He did not sit in his chair, yet he did not move to restrain her either. There was an understanding in his posture, a silent acknowledgement that she had glimpsed what she was not meant to see, but had not yet crossed a line that demanded punishment. Ashley's eyes swept across the chamber once more. Every weapon, every chain, every mark on the stone walls spoke of a history she could not yet comprehend. Rowan's life had been far from ordinary. He had been tested in ways she could scarcely imagine, and the man who sat before her was both a king and something else, a guardian of secrets, a wielder of power that was both terrifying and necessary. I will leave now," Ashley said finally, her voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through her veins. Rowan inclined his head, a gesture both acknowledging and warning. "Go, but remember what you have seen. Remember why you came here. and remember that nothing is as it seems. Ashley retraced her steps through the corridor, each footfall measured, each breath deliberate. When she returned to her chambers, the first light of dawn was filtering through the windows, painting the stone floors in soft gold. Her body trembled, not from cold but from the realization that Rowan was not merely a paralyzed king as the stories claimed. He was a man of power, of danger, of secrets she could scarcely begin to understand. Yet despite her fear, despite the orders from Helena burning in her mind, there was a strange sense of exhilaration. She had faced something forbidden, something dangerous, and she had survived. The palace had not crushed her. Rowan had not destroyed her. She had seen a glimpse of the truth, and with it, a part of her own courage had grown. Ashley dressed for the day, but her thoughts remained in the forbidden chamber. The chains, the weapons, the claw marks. Each piece of the puzzle hinted at a story she was only beginning to understand. Rowan's paralyzed legs were not a sign of weakness. They were a mask, a strategy, a layer of deception carefully constructed to shield him from a world that would otherwise seek to destroy him. As she moved through the palace halls, servants whispered behind their hands and guards glanced at her with curious eyes. Ashley ignored them. She no longer felt entirely like the lamb of the palace, the sacrificial bride bound to a cursed king. She felt something else, a tentative awareness that she had stepped into a world of shadows and that to survive, she would need to learn its rules, its dangers, and perhaps even the man she had been sent to spy upon. By the time she returned to the dining hall for the midday meal, Ashley's resolve had hardened. She would obey Helena to save Caleb, yes, but she would not falter in uncovering the truth. Rowan's strength, his secrets, the chains in the dark, they all spoke to a world of power and danger she was beginning to understand, and she would navigate it no matter the cost. The palace life continued around her, bustling and indifferent to the storm she carried within. Ashley knew that her days would be measured in vigilance, that her nights would be haunted by secrets she might never fully comprehend. And yet, she felt a faint, almost imperceptible thrill, the knowledge that she had seen the hidden side of the king, that she had glimpsed the reality behind the mask. And in that knowledge, Ashley found the smallest flicker of determination. She would endure, she would learn, and she would survive. Ashley's days in the palace had become a delicate dance of observation, obedience, and careful rebellion. The memory of the forbidden chamber haunted her every step, the chains bolted to the walls, the silver-coated weapons, the claw marks, reminders of the dangerous secret she had glimpsed. Rowan had allowed her intrusion with a measured calm, his gaze both warning and unreadable, leaving Ashley with the uncomfortable truth that he was far more than he appeared. Despite the danger, curiosity had hardened within her like steel. Every glance she caught of him, every subtle movement she observed, carried unspoken weight. Rowan was a man of hidden power, and the knowledge of it both terrified and fascinated her. But it was also a warning. Cross him again, and the consequences would be dire. "You've seen enough," Rowan had said the day after her nocturnal intrusion. His silver eyes glimmered under the torchlight, and the faintest edge of anger laced his calm, deliberate voice. "Do not test me again, Ashley. The next time, there will be no mercy." Ashley had nodded, swallowing hard, the echo of fear and awe tightening her chest. She had obeyed, at least for the next few days. But the full moon came, and with it, a night that demanded defiance. It began with screams, high-pitched, guttural, and impossibly human. They tore through the palace corridors, ricocheting off the stone walls, echoing like cries from some other world. Ashley's heart leapt into her throat. She knew instantly that they were coming from Rowan's private chambers, though instinct and reason screamed that she should not go. The palace, usually hushed beneath the discipline of servants and guards, seemed to pulse with a strange energy that night. Shadows were darker, the wind sharper. Ashley's instincts clashed with her fear, but the scream, the raw, agonized sound, called to her. She moved through the corridors with silent determination, feet gliding over the cold marble. Each step brought her closer to the source of the chaos, closer to the forbidden truth she had only begun to comprehend. The heavy door to Rowan's chamber loomed ahead. It was the same door she had feared days before, bolted and reinforced. Yet now, it vibrated faintly with sounds that were not human. Ashley's hand hovered over the door handle, her breath shallow. The screams were closer, more desperate. Against every warning she had received, against every instinct screaming at her to flee, she pushed the door open. The sight that met her eyes stole her breath. Rowan was no longer merely the cold, composed king she had known. His body was contorted, shifting in ways that defied logic. His legs, bound by the laws of paralysis she had believed in, were moving with impossible fluidity, muscles tensing and coiling as if made of sinew and steel. His skin rippled unnaturally, as though a force beneath it fought to break free. Silver light flickered in his eyes, and his claws tore at the air and himself, shredding flesh and muscle as though the very curse within him demanded release. Ashley staggered back, her hand pressed over her mouth. Her heart pounded, terror and disbelief warring with a growing fascination. She had suspected Rowan's strength, suspected that the man she had been told was crippled, hid a power beyond imagination. But this was more than she could have imagined. The transformation was violent, brutal, and beautiful in its terrifying symmetry. His form flickered between human and something other, a being of claws, fangs, and wild silver-eyed rage. The chains in the room trembled, the air charged with tension as though the walls themselves feared the power contained within. Rowan's head snapped toward her suddenly as though he had sensed her presence. His eyes, glowing like molten silver, locked onto hers. Ashley froze. She could feel the pull of his gaze, raw and commanding, yet beneath it lay something else, a flicker of pain, of desperation, of control being wrested from him. "You shouldn't be here," he growled, voice a deep rumble that vibrated through the floor. The claws extended from his hands glistened, and he flexed them as though testing the air itself. "I warned you, Ashley. Never cross me again." Ashley's hands trembled. I heard," she began, but words failed her. She wanted to explain, to justify, but the sight before her rendered speech meaningless. Rowan, the cursed king, the man bound to a chair, the predator she had been forced to marry, was something beyond human comprehension. He seemed to shift again, pulling himself partially upright, the paralytic rumors of the court crumbling under the raw reality of his movements. Every sinew flexed, every muscle worked in unison, as though the curse itself demanded expression through pain and power. Blood streaked his skin where the claws had torn, silver glinting faintly against the moonlight that streamed through the window. Ashley's breath came in shallow gasps. The fear was intoxicating, but beneath it was a strange, undeniable draw. The man she had feared, the man she had observed and obeyed, was alive in ways she had never expected. The curse was not weakness. It was strength, a force contained, restrained, and yet now, unleashed. Rowan's gaze softened fractionally, though the glow remained. "Do you understand now?" he asked, voice low, almost intimate, yet still laced with the predator's edge. "I am not crippled. I am bound by something far worse. You should not have seen this." Ashley swallowed, trying to steady her racing thoughts. She had to understand. She had to survive. And yet a part of her wanted nothing more than to step closer, to reach out, to touch the man who held such terrifying power. I didn't mean," she began. "You disobeyed," he interrupted, voice sharp now, commanding. "And you were foolish to think the palace would protect you from what lives in me." Ashley's pulse raced. Every instinct screamed that she should retreat, but something deeper, curiosity, fascination, something primal, kept her rooted. Rowan's strength was overwhelming, but so was the sense of controlled chaos that hovered around him. He was a man of power, yes, but also of suffering, bound by a curse that demanded expression and control in equal measure. The transformation slowed, the violent energy subsiding, yet the silver in his eyes remained. His body, now partially human once more, flexed against invisible restraints. He sank to his knees, not fully human, not fully beast, but undeniably Rowan. Ashley stepped closer cautiously. You're cursed," she whispered, barely audible over the pounding of her own heart. Rowan's gaze met hers fully, piercing, unyielding. "Yes," he admitted, voice hoarse from exertion. "And every full moon, the curse demands its due. Every night I fight it, I risk everything, and you should not have come here." Ashley's mind reeled. All the pieces fell together, the claw marks, the chains, the weapons coated in silver, the stories whispered in the halls. Rowan was no ordinary king. His paralysis had been a lie, or at least a partial truth. He was strong, deadly, and cursed. I just wanted to," she began. But words failed her again. There was no excuse, no justification that could make her intrusion safe. She had broken his trust, entered the forbidden, and witnessed something no one outside the palace was meant to see. Rowan rose slowly to his chair, his movements controlled now, though every step radiated power. The transformation had passed, but the aura of danger lingered. His silver eyes remained fixed on her, a reminder that what she had seen was real, and that it carried consequences beyond her understanding. "You have seen my secret," he said finally, "and that changes everything. Not because I fear you, but because the palace fears weakness, and weakness invites death." Ashley nodded, swallowing hard. She understood more than she wanted to. Rowan's curse was not just a personal torment, it was a weapon, a defense, and a danger all in one. And she, by disobeying, had stepped into the center of it. For the rest of the night, Ashley could hardly sleep. The moonlight filtering through her window reminded her of the vision she had witnessed. The beast within the man she was bound to, the predator and the cursed king coexisting in a single form. Her heart raced with fear, fascination, and an unspoken understanding. Rowan was no ordinary man, and she would have to navigate his world with care, courage, and respect if she hoped to survive. By morning, the palace had returned to its ordinary rhythm, servants moving as if nothing had happened, the walls echoing only the distant murmurs of the court. But Ashley knew better. The world she had stepped into was far more dangerous, far more alive than she had imagined. Rowan was a monster beneath the moon, and the curse he bore would touch every aspect of her life from that moment forward. Ashley dressed with careful deliberation, every movement measured. Her resolve had hardened. She could fear him, she could obey, but she could not ignore the truth she had seen. And in that knowledge lay a new strength. If she was to protect Caleb, survive the palace, and understand the man she had been forced to marry, she would need every ounce of courage she could muster. The morning air in the palace was heavy with anticipation, though no one dared speak of it openly. Rumors had spread like wildfire through the halls, whispered behind closed doors and beneath bowing heads. The Council of Alphas was convening, and their intent was clear. They sought to declare Rowan unfit to rule. A paralyzed king was a danger to the pack, they claimed, a weakness they could exploit. Ashley had felt the tension building over the past week. Servants moved briskly through the corridors, their eyes darting to Rowan's chambers with unease. The nobles whispered in the dining hall, their words laced with judgment. Even the air seemed to hum with anticipation, as though the stone walls themselves were aware of the storm about to break. Rowan sat in the throne room, his form still bound to the chair, though Ashley now knew better than to underestimate him. His silver eyes were fixed on the entrance, unreadable, as if he had already calculated every word that would be spoken, every move that would be made. He did not rise to greet the council, nor did he flinch at their entry. His presence was enough to command silence, yet Ashley could feel the tension radiating from him like a coiled spring. The council entered with all the pomp of authority. Each alpha carried themselves with a mixture of pride and arrogance, their voices loud and commanding. They circled the throne like predators scenting weakness. "The king is unfit," one declared, his tone sharp, designed to provoke. "He is broken, his legs useless, his rule compromised. The pack deserves a leader capable of standing, of fighting, of protecting us." Another nodded, adding, "The girl beside him may hold his heart, but she cannot shield him from the demands of the council. He is a danger to all." Ashley's pulse quickened. She had expected this, of course. The council had never accepted Rowan fully, but she had not anticipated the venom in their words, the ease with which they dismissed a man who had led them through countless wars and challenges. Rowan's response was quiet, measured, but every syllable dripped with authority. "I have led this pack through storms that would have broken lesser men. I am not paralyzed in mind, only in body. My strength lies in strategy, in control, in knowing when to strike. And strike I will, if necessary." The room erupted into murmurs, whispers of disbelief and doubt. Rowan's silver eyes flicked to Ashley for a moment, a fleeting acknowledgement that the next few moments would test her as much as him. Ashley felt heat rise to her cheeks. She had never spoken in the council, never dared confront such authority, and yet something inside her flared. Caleb, the threats, Helena's manipulations, the injustice of seeing Rowan attacked when he had done nothing wrong. It became a fire she could not contain. "My king," she began, her voice trembling but firm, "you have led the pack with wisdom beyond measure. These men speak of weakness, yet they ignore the victories they owe to your guidance. To question your ability is to question the loyalty and honor of every alpha here." A hush fell over the council. Heads turned, eyes narrowing on her. A young alpha, bristling with indignation, spoke first. "And who are you to speak in this hall, girl? You are a bride, nothing more." Ashley's jaw tightened. "I am his queen, and I am bound not just by title but by the truth of what I have witnessed. Do not mistake silence for weakness. To speak now is my choice, and my loyalty is absolute." Rowan's eyes darkened, silver intensity sharp as a blade. He did not interrupt, but the tension between them crackled. Every word Ashley had spoken seemed to strike chords she did not yet fully understand. Defiance, protection, desire, all mixing in a dangerous combination. The council murmured, debating, but Ashley did not waver. Her heart pounded as she spoke again, each word carefully chosen. "You demand him to stand and fight when he has already fought beyond measure. His body may be confined, but his mind, his command, his power is unmatched. To remove him is to invite chaos." The room fell silent. Even the most vocal alpha seemed struck by her conviction. For a moment, Ashley felt a flicker of triumph. She had defended Rowan. She had silenced the council with nothing but her words. Rowan's silver eyes, however, told her something she had not anticipated. Anger. It was a slow-burning fury, restrained yet palpable. He did not speak immediately. Instead, he rose, though not fully, his hands gripping the arms of his chair, the motion deliberate and commanding. Ashley felt the shift in energy instantly, the room's atmosphere bending to his presence once more. "You dared speak in my defense," he said, his voice low, controlled, but with an edge that made her knees weaken. "You have overstepped, Ashley." Ashley's heart skipped. I only—" "You have interfered in matters beyond your station," he interrupted, moving closer to her side of the throne room. "Politics are not for the timid, nor are they for those driven by emotion." "I defended you because it was right," she insisted, her voice rising despite the tremor in her throat. "Because they were wrong." Rowan's gaze pierced hers, and Ashley felt as though he were unraveling her entirely. Her thoughts, her fears, her desires laid bare beneath those silver eyes. His presence was magnetic, suffocating, and impossible to ignore. "You are reckless," he said finally, stepping even closer. The proximity was deliberate, the space between them charged with unspoken tension. And yet, That same recklessness makes you dangerous in ways I have not encountered before. Ashley's pulse thundered. She could feel his breath, faint yet intoxicating, and the heat emanating from him seemed to pull at her like gravity. She tried to step back, but her legs refused to obey fully, trapped by the intensity of his gaze. You speak of loyalty, of truth, yet you do not understand the consequences of crossing me. Rowan murmured, his voice dropping lower, husky with restrained power. And still, I cannot deny the effect you have on me. Ashley's chest tightened. She understood the warning, yet she could not look away. Her heart hammered not with fear, but with a dangerous anticipation. The tension that had simmered between them since the wedding, the cold, commanding presence of the king, the forbidden glimpses of his strength, the shadows of desire, now surged like wildfire. Rowan's hand, gloved and commanding, brushed against her arm, not cruelly, but with a precision that set her nerves alight. Her breath caught, and a shiver raced down her spine. Every inch of her wanted to pull away, to retreat into caution, but the pull of him was undeniable. "Do you feel it?" he asked, the edge of his voice like silk laced with steel. This connection that neither of us can ignore?" Ashley's lips parted, words failing her. She wanted to speak, to protest, to flee, but the intensity of the moment left her silent, trembling and captivated. Rowan moved closer still, the scent of him, wood, iron, and something darker, primal, filling her senses. His eyes held hers, silver fire igniting beneath the controlled exterior. The distance between them was measured yet charged with the possibility of crossing boundaries that had never been crossed before. For a heartbeat, Ashley felt the pull of everything forbidden, the authority of the king, the danger of his power, the thrill of defying him even as she obeyed. The room seemed to shrink around them, the council's whispers and power struggles fading into insignificance. Rowan's lips hovered near hers close enough that she could feel the heat of his breath, yet he did not close the distance. The control he wielded was absolute, precise, and intoxicating. Ashley's hands trembled at her sides, her mind torn between duty, fear, and the electric, almost unbearable attraction that crackled in the charged air between them. "You will learn," Rowan murmured, his lips brushing against her temple, an almost kiss that set her heart racing. The cost of interference, and the power of desire when it is finally acknowledged. Ashley's breath hitched, her resolve shivering under the intensity of his presence. She had defended him, yes, but in doing so, she had also unleashed a tension that neither of them could fully control. It was a dangerous game they had begun, a delicate balance of power, politics, and something darker, something that threatened to consume them both if they were not careful. The council's trap had failed. Rowan remained unshaken in his authority, his power undeniable. Yet the interaction left Ashley changed, aware now not only of the danger he commanded in the palace but of the storm of desire and intensity that lay beneath his controlled exterior. And though the council would speak again, and the palace would whisper, one truth was undeniable. The dynamics between Ashley and Rowan had shifted, and neither of them could ignore the tension simmering just beneath the surface. By the time Ashley retreated to her chambers that night, her body thrumming with adrenaline and unresolved desire, she understood something essential. Rowan was a king to be obeyed, feared, and respected, but he was also a man of power, passion, and darkness. A man whose control and restraint masked a potential for violence and desire that both terrified and fascinated her. Ashley lay in her bed, the flickering torchlight painting shadows across the room, her mind replaying every glance, every touch, every moment of their confrontation in the council hall. She knew the palace would continue to test her, Rowan would continue to challenge her, and her loyalty would be stretched in ways she had not yet imagined. And in the quiet of her chambers, Ashley realized that the danger was no longer only external. It had moved inside her, threaded through her veins, binding her to Rowan in ways that neither command nor caution could fully sever. The morning air in the palace carried an unfamiliar weight, thick with tension and unspoken threats. The servants whispered as Ashley moved through the corridors, their eyes darting nervously toward her. Something had shifted overnight, though no one dared say exactly what. The palace seemed alive with whispers, shadows curling along the walls like living creatures. Ashley herself felt the change immediately. Her steps quickened as she approached the throne room, a sense of dread gnawing at her chest. Caleb, her little stepbrother. She had not seen him since Helena had sent him away under the guise of visiting relatives. She had thought him safe, hidden from the reach of her stepmother's cruelty, and yet, the palace guards had come early that morning, moving with a precision and ruthlessness that spoke of premeditation. They had left no message, no warning. Only the image burned into Ashley's mind of Caleb, bound in chains, escorted by guards whose eyes betrayed no hesitation, only obedience. When she entered the throne room, the scene that greeted her made her blood run cold. Caleb knelt in the center of the hall, chains biting into his small wrists and ankles. His wide, innocent eyes were filled with fear and confusion, and his small body trembled under the weight of the metal that restrained him. Around him, the Council of Alphas stood, their faces masks of stern judgment. They whispered amongst themselves, but their words carried the sharp edge of accusation. Rowan sat in his chair, eyes narrowing as he observed the scene. His silver gaze was piercing, measuring, calculating. Ashley had seen anger in him before, but this was different, cold, lethal, and absolute. Every fiber of his being radiated power and control, yet beneath it, there was a dangerous tension that hinted at the storm he could unleash. "Explain," Rowan commanded, his voice carrying through the chamber like a blade. "Why is my palace invaded by the presence of this boy?" A senior council member, tall and broad-shouldered, stepped forward. "Your Grace, this child, this Caleb, was found delivering messages to unknown parties beyond our borders. We suspect he is a messenger for assassins seeking to infiltrate the palace." Ashley felt her stomach lurch. "No," she cried, stepping forward. "He would never. He couldn't. He's only a child." The council murmured, but Rowan raised a hand, and silence fell instantly. His eyes did not leave hers, sharp and unyielding. Silence. "Let the facts speak before your pleas do." Ashley swallowed, her voice trembling as she addressed him. "Please, my king. Caleb is innocent. My stepmother, Helena, she has orchestrated this. He is a child bound by her lies and manipulations. You must see that. He is not your enemy." Rowan's gaze flicked toward her, narrowing slightly. "Do you accuse your stepmother of treachery?" "Yes." Ashley's voice rose, stronger than she expected. "She would harm him to control me. She would use his life as leverage for her schemes. He is not guilty of any crime, Rowan. I swear it." The room seemed to hold its breath. The council members shifted uneasily, some frowning, others exchanging glances that suggested disbelief or irritation. Rowan's jaw tightened. Ashley could see the muscle in his neck flex, his hands clenching the arms of the chair. "You dare place yourself above judgment?" Rowan's voice dropped, resonant with danger. "You accuse those who serve the pack of loyalty while you speak of innocence without proof. Your words are powerful, girl, but power without wisdom is dangerous." Ashley's chest tightened. She felt both fear and determination coiling within her. She could not let Caleb die. Not now. Not ever. Her voice softened, pleading now, but still steady. "Rowan, please. If you value loyalty, then listen to me. Caleb is loyal to you, to this pack. He is only a child, bound by the machinations of someone who seeks to control me, to control everything. Do not let her cruelty cost an innocent life." The silver of Rowan's eyes flashed with an emotion she could not read entirely. Anger, yes, but also something deeper. Conflict. He leaned forward, the motion slow but deliberate, and the air seemed to thrum with the weight of his presence. "You place yourself between me and my judgment," Rowan said quietly. yet every word carried the authority of a king. You would choose this boy over my command? Ashley's throat tightened. Her mind raced. Loyalty to Rowan had always been a delicate balance between obedience and survival. But now, the choice was stark, impossible, and cruel. Betray Caleb, her stepbrother, or betray the king she had vowed to serve. I cannot betray him, she whispered. Not for anyone. Rowan's eyes narrowed, the silver intensity sharpening to a knife edge. Then you leave me with no choice. Ashley felt her stomach drop. The words were final, absolute, and yet something in Rowan's tone hinted at the conflict within him. He was not merely a king dispensing judgment. He was a man, and a man who had been betrayed countless times. His eyes softened for a fraction of a second as they met hers, and she saw the struggle beneath the surface, the pull between vengeance, justice, and the restraint he had cultivated for years. She stepped closer to Caleb, placing a protective hand on his small shoulder. His eyes widened, clinging to her in fear and confusion. Rowan's gaze shifted to her again, silver fire meeting steadfast defiance. You would risk yourself to save him? Yes, she said firmly. I will do whatever it takes to protect him. He is innocent. The room fell silent. Even the council seemed suspended in the tension, aware that something fragile and dangerous was unfolding between the king and his bride. Rowan's hands gripped the arms of his chair tighter, the knuckles white beneath the tension. Very well, he said finally, his voice low and measured, though the undercurrent of power made every nerve in Ashley's body quiver. I will hear the truth. But understand this, Ashley. Loyalty has its price. Mercy is not granted lightly in this hall, and betrayal, even under the guise of protection, is not without consequence. Ashley's heart pounded, but she did not step back. She held her gaze, steady, unwavering. She would not falter, not now. Not when Caleb's life, his very breath, was at stake. The council members shifted uneasily as Rowan addressed them. This boy is accused, yet he is innocent. The fault lies not with him, but with those who seek to manipulate and control from the shadows. Helena's reach is long, but it ends here. A murmur rippled through the council. Ashley's heart lifted slightly, though she knew the danger had not yet passed. Rowan's judgment was not yet complete, and she could feel the simmering tension between them, the anger, the pride, the unspoken connection that had begun to grow since the council's confrontation weeks before. Rowan stood, his movement deliberate, commanding. The silver of his eyes glimmered with intensity as he approached Caleb. The boy flinched, but Ashley held him steady. Rowan reached out, and for a moment she feared the worst. But instead of punishment, he removed the chains with a precision and strength that belied his paralyzed appearance. Caleb gasped, rubbing his wrists, eyes wide with fear and awe. Ashley pulled him close, relief flooding her body, but Rowan's gaze remained locked on hers. You made your choice, he said quietly, his tone both warning and acknowledgement. You chose mercy. You chose loyalty to the innocent over obedience to command. Understand this, Ashley. Choices such as these have consequences. Not all will forgive you as I do. Ashley nodded, her chest tight with emotion. I understand, she whispered. But I could not let him die. I would never let him die. Rowan's eyes softened for a fleeting moment, and she glimpsed a rare vulnerability beneath the veneer of the Alpha King. Yet the intensity of his presence reminded her that he was still the ruler, still the man whose fury could ignite at a moment's notice. The council fell silent, watching the interaction with a mix of awe, fear, and respect. Rowan returned to his chair, his movement deliberate, reclaiming the authority that was always his. Ashley stayed close to Caleb, her hands steady on his shoulders, yet her eyes never left Rowan. She understood now more than ever the fragile, dangerous balance of power and emotion in the palace, and the unspoken bond forming between her and the king. As the morning passed into afternoon, Ashley led Caleb to a safe chamber, ensuring he was fed, comforted, and hidden from further plots. Yet even as she did so, she could feel Rowan's eyes on her, silver fire tracking her every movement. She had saved Caleb, yes, but the cost had been the delicate thread of control and obedience she maintained with Rowan. And still, she did not falter. She had chosen mercy, loyalty, and protection over fear and compliance. It was a choice that would echo through the palace, through the council, and through Rowan's guarded heart. And though the weight of that choice pressed heavily upon her, Ashley felt a fierce, undeniable sense of purpose. She would endure the dangers of the palace, confront the manipulations of her stepmother, and navigate the perilous bond forming between herself and the Alpha King, no matter the cost. The throne room was quiet, save for the hushed whispers of the court. Even the sunlight streaming through the tall arched windows seemed subdued, as though the palace itself held its breath. Ashley stood near the center, her hands folded in front of her, her gaze fixed on the polished stone floor. The events of the morning still weighed heavily on her chest, a mixture of fear, relief, and exhaustion that made her knees ache. Caleb, now free from his chains but still trembling, sat quietly beside a servant who watched him with careful concern. Ashley's heart ached at the sight. He had been terrified, innocent, caught in a web of schemes he could not understand. She could never forgive Helena for what she had done. Rowan remained in his chair, a picture of controlled authority. Every muscle in his body seemed to hum with tension beneath the surface, though to anyone else, he appeared calm, composed, unshakable. His silver eyes scanned the court with the precision of a predator assessing his domain. And then, slowly, they rested on Ashley. "You have chosen wisely," he said, his voice low but carrying across the hall. "You risked yourself for the life of the boy, and in doing so you have proven a quality far rarer than obedience. You have proven loyalty." Ashley's chest tightened. She had acted out of desperation, out of love for Caleb, but to hear Rowan frame it as a virtue filled her with both pride and unease. Pride because she had done the right thing, unease because Rowan's approval carried a weight she could not yet measure, and the consequences of displeasing him had been made clear repeatedly. Rowan's eyes swept the room, silver fire glinting beneath his dark lashes. "But loyalty has its forms," he continued, "and actions, no matter how noble, must be formalized, recognized, and understood by all who dwell within this palace." The court stirred uneasily, murmurs rippling through the rows of nobles and alphas. Ashley straightened instinctively, sensing that something monumental was about to occur. Her throat tightened, and she swallowed hard. "You will swear an oath," Rowan declared, his voice ringing with authority. "Binding yourself to me, and through that oath the life of Caleb shall be secured. Fail, and the consequences will be yours alone." Ashley's stomach knotted. The weight of the oath was immense. It was not merely a promise. It was a formal recognition of Rowan's authority over her life, a public acknowledgement of her subjugation to the king she had once feared, and now, a man she could not stop noticing, whose presence made her pulse race and her thoughts falter. She met his gaze, steadying herself. "I will swear it," she said firmly, her voice echoing in the high-ceilinged room. "I swear loyalty to you, Rowan, as my king, protector, and lord. I pledge my obedience and my service to safeguard Caleb, to uphold your name, and to follow your command in all matters." The words felt heavy on her tongue, binding her in a way that thrilled and terrified her simultaneously. Every syllable carried a weight she could not yet measure, a power she could feel coursing through the room and into her very being. Rowan leaned slightly forward, his silver eyes sharp and intense. "You understand," he said, voice low, dangerous, yet threaded with a faint undertone that only Ashley could perceive, "that this is not a game. Once sworn, your loyalty is no longer a choice. It is a contract, one that I will enforce with precision. Fail me, and the consequences will not be forgiving." "I understand," Ashley whispered, though her mind raced with the implications. She had made her choice, and the safety of Caleb had demanded it. She would swear loyalty, accept her position, and endure whatever humiliation or control Rowan deemed necessary. The thought of betraying her stepbrother had been unthinkable. The thought of resisting Rowan now was equally unthinkable. Rowan's lips curved slightly, a subtle expression that held a promise of approval and an unspoken warning. He gestured toward the hall, and the servants stepped back, clearing a space that felt charged with authority. The court watched in silence as Ashley lowered her head, bending slightly before Rowan, the posture of submission formal and deliberate. "You are mine," Rowan declared, his voice carrying across the room with a resonance that silenced even the whispers. "Bound by oath, bound by law, bound by the power that grants me rule over this pack. Let it be known to all here. Ashley is mine." The words burned through Ashley like fire. Pride, humiliation, and an inexplicable thrill mingled within her chest. She felt exposed, laid bare to the judgment of the court, yet a strange satisfaction fluttered through her. Rowan had acknowledged her loyalty, recognized her courage, and claimed her in a way that was both terrifying and intoxicating. Ashley straightened, her heart hammering in her chest. She had sworn the oath. The deed was done. The court now understood her position, and Rowan's authority was made absolute, even in her own eyes. Yet, even as she felt the sting of public submission, she noticed something subtle in Rowan's expression. The silver intensity of his gaze softened ever so slightly as he looked at her. It was not complete trust, not yet, but it was an opening, a crack in the armor of the king she had feared and admired in equal measure. For the first time, she sensed that he might allow her closer to the truths he guarded so fiercely, that he might let her into the world behind the chains, the weapons, the curses, and the power he wielded. The oath shifted the dynamic between them, creating a delicate balance of control and intimacy. Ashley's submission had been public, formal, and complete, but Rowan's subtle acknowledgement suggested a hidden dialogue, a trust forming in the spaces between command and compliance. The council members murmured amongst themselves, some bowing their heads, others exchanging skeptical glances, but Rowan's voice cut through the noise once more. "She has chosen wisely," he said, "and through this oath the life of Caleb is preserved. Let this be a lesson. Loyalty is not given lightly, nor is mercy granted freely. Both are earned, and both are binding." Ashley felt the tension in her chest ease slightly. Caleb was safe, for now. Her stepbrother, innocent and trembling, would not suffer at the hands of Helena's schemes, and that knowledge brought her a deep, unspoken relief. Yet the price of that safety had been her autonomy, her public acknowledgement of Rowan's authority over her. Humiliation burned faintly at the edges of her pride, a bitter reminder that in this palace, loyalty came at a steep cost. She met Rowan's gaze again, sensing the subtle shifts beneath the silver intensity, the trust, the assessment, the warning. He was letting her closer, allowing her glimpses into his world, and the thought both exhilarated and terrified her. Ashley withdrew to her chambers later that day, Caleb safely escorted to his quarters under the watch of loyal servants. She sat by the window, staring out at the gardens below, her mind still reeling from the events of the morning. The oath she had sworn was binding, formal, and irreversible. It tethered her to Rowan, and through that tether, she had glimpsed the depth of his power, the ferocity of his control, and the complexity of the man behind the throne. Her thoughts returned to the subtle moments in the throne room, the way Rowan's gaze had softened, the brief acknowledgement of trust, the silent permission to approach closer to the truths of his world. The tension between them, simmering since the day she had first entered the palace, now carried a new weight. Recognition, a bond forged in necessity, danger, and shared secrets. Ashley exhaled slowly, feeling the duality of her situation. She was both humbled and emboldened, bound and empowered, aware of the power Rowan held over her, and yet sensing the potential for a connection deeper than mere duty. The palace, with all its whispers, schemes, and dangers, had become the arena in which their complex relationship would continue to evolve. A delicate dance of authority, desire, trust, and survival. For the first time since her arrival, Ashley felt a flicker of understanding. Rowan's claim over her was not merely a display of dominance. It was a gateway into his world, a test of loyalty, courage, and resilience. And she was determined to navigate it, to endure, and to earn a place beside him, not merely as a bride, but as someone who could move within his world with insight, intelligence, and courage. The oath had been sworn. The consequences had been faced. The court had witnessed the act. And yet, the subtle currents of trust, tension, and connection between Ashley and Rowan had begun to flow in ways neither could yet fully define. As the evening light faded and the palace settled into the quiet rhythm of night, Ashley lay on her bed, Caleb's laughter and footsteps echoing faintly from nearby chambers. She understood that loyalty was binding, that obedience carried cost, but she also sensed the fragile beginnings of something more, a connection with Rowan that could, in time, become a source of strength, understanding, and even desire. And in that understanding, Ashley found a quiet resolve. She would serve, she would obey, and she would endure. But she would also watch, learn, and move carefully within the dangerous, intoxicating orbit of the king she had sworn to serve. The palace was quiet that night, unusually so, as if even the walls were reluctant to bear witness to what was about to unfold. Ashley moved carefully through the dimly lit corridors, the echo of her footsteps muted by the thick carpets that lined the halls. Her heart pounded with both fear and anticipation. She had seen fragments of Rowan's world, the chains, the weapons, the shadows, but she had never known the full story. A single candle flickered in the corridor outside his chambers, casting a wavering light across the polished stone. Ashley hesitated, her hand hovering over the doorframe. Every instinct screamed caution. Rowan's temper, his power, and the intensity of his presence were legendary within the palace. But curiosity and something far more dangerous, empathy, drove her forward. She had heard whispers from servants, rumors she had pieced together in careful fragments. Betrayal on the battlefield, a curse inflicted by enemies who had feared his strength. Half-shifted, tortured, bound by agony, yet cunning enough to conceal his full power. The fragments painted a picture of a man she did not yet understand, but already could not ignore. Ashley's fingers brushed the cold handle of the door, hesitating for a heartbeat before she pushed it open. The room beyond was dim, shadows pooling in corners, the faint glow of the moonlight spilling through the tall windows. Rowan's chair sat near the center, but tonight he was not there, or so she thought. A low, guttural sound drew her gaze to the shadows near the far wall. There, bound to the floor by invisible chains of silver light, was Rowan. Or the man she had seen only in part until now. His body was twisted, muscles flexing as though resisting some unseen force. His eyes, silver and blazing with pain, caught hers, and for a heartbeat the world narrowed to the distance between them. Ashley's breath caught. She had never seen him like this. Half human, half something else entirely. His form shifted, subtly, yet violently, as though the curse within him fought to escape, tearing against the bonds that held him in place. The silver light of his eyes glimmered with anguish, but also with a focus, a predatory intelligence that had always been there beneath the veneer of control. "Rowan," she whispered, stepping closer despite the tremor in her limbs. "I didn't know. I didn't understand." He flinched at the sound of her voice but did not speak. The room seemed charged with tension, every breath she took reverberating in the silent hall. Slowly, carefully, he shifted back toward his human form, the glow in his eyes dimming as he fought to regain control. Ashley took another step forward, drawn by a mixture of fear, fascination, and something she could not yet name. You've been hiding this, she said softly, her voice trembling. All this time, the chains, the weapons, the palace whispers. It was for you to survive, to protect yourself and the pack. Rowan's gaze met hers, silver eyes sharp but tempered with something fragile beneath the surface. He said nothing, yet the intensity of his stare spoke volumes. The pain, the strategy, the restraint, all of it lay bare in that look. You were betrayed, Ashley continued, her voice gaining strength as pieces fell into place. On the battlefield, they cursed you, half-shifted, tortured, and you conceal your strength to root out the traitors still within these walls. A flicker of recognition crossed his expression, subtle but undeniable. He did not deny her words. Instead, he studied her, as though weighing her understanding against the danger of revealing too much. Ashley swallowed hard. I understand now why you're so guarded. Why the palace sees only a crippled king. You've endured so much, and yet you fight. You endure. You protect. And no one, not even the council, understands the true measure of who you are. For a long moment, Rowan did not move, did not speak. The air between them was thick with unspoken truths. Slowly, deliberately, he lowered himself into his chair, the faintest hint of exhaustion in his posture. Ashley could see the toll the curse took on him, the tension in his muscles, the weariness in his eyes, but also the resolve that had always defined him. You see too much, he finally said, voice low, roughened by both restraint and emotion. And yet, you see only part of the cost. Few do. Ashley stepped closer, her pulse hammering in her chest. Then let me see the rest, she whispered. Let me understand. I want to help if I can. Not just Caleb, not just because I swore loyalty, but because I care. I care about you. His silver eyes widened slightly, a flicker of vulnerability surfacing before it was masked again by control. Care is dangerous, he said, voice almost a growl. For you, for me. It is not a luxury I can afford, Ashley. It is a weakness that could destroy everything. I don't care, she said, her voice firmer now. I can't unsee this. I can't unfeel it. You are not just a king, not just a puzzle of power and fear. You are more. And I want to be here. I want to understand. Even if it means facing danger. Even if it means risking everything. Rowan's jaw tightened. The tension in the room was palpable, a magnetic force pulling them toward one another. His curse, his power, and his pain were all there, raw and unshielded. Yet she met him without fear, without hesitation. For the first time, she was not pleading for mercy or negotiating safety. She was asserting her presence, her will, and her empathy. You are reckless, he murmured, his voice a blend of warning and something more. A quiet fascination that he had never revealed to anyone. And yet, there is courage in your recklessness, a quality I have rarely encountered. Ashley's gaze did not waver. Then let me be reckless with you, she whispered, stepping close enough that the faint scent of him, iron, smoke, something darker, filled her senses. Let me be here, even if it frightens you. Even if it frightens me, I cannot turn away from what I feel, from what I know. Rowan leaned back slightly, studying her with the intensity of a predator assessing prey. But there was no malice here, only the weight of a man who had endured betrayal, pain, and a curse no one could fully understand. Ashley sensed a shift, subtle but undeniable, as though the barriers between them had softened, if only slightly. You understand nothing fully, he said, voice low, controlled. And yet perhaps you understand enough. Ashley's lips parted, her chest rising with anticipation, her heart pounding. She did not know if she could fully comprehend the depths of his suffering, the curse that bound him, or the danger he carried within him. But she understood enough to see the man beneath the legend, beneath the chains, beneath the fearsome exterior. And in that understanding, a dangerous pull began to form, one she could not and would not resist. Rowan studied her silently, and for a moment, the silence stretched between them, charged with an intensity neither had yet named. The curse, the pain, the past, they were all there, woven into the fabric of his being. And yet in that room under the pale moonlight, Ashley began to see him not just as a monster, not just as a king, but as a man who had suffered, endured, and survived. A man whose vulnerability she was only beginning to glimpse, and whose strength she could not ignore. The night passed quietly after that, the tension easing just enough for Ashley to retreat to her chambers with Caleb safely asleep nearby. Yet even as she lay on her bed, the image of Rowan, half-shifted, glowing silver eyes restrained by the curse that both bound and empowered him, lingered in her mind. She understood now the full weight of the man she had sworn loyalty to, and she understood too that her feelings for him were no longer purely loyalty or duty. They were something far more complex, something that would test both of them in ways neither could predict. And for the first time, Ashley felt the dangerous thrill of being close enough to Rowan to witness the truth. The man behind the monster, the curse behind the king, and the fragile, terrifying bond that was beginning to form between them. The palace had grown eerily silent by late afternoon, the corridors usually alive with the footsteps of servants and guards now seeming almost empty. Ashley moved cautiously through the halls, her mind still consumed by the revelations from the night before. Rowan's curse, his half-shifted torment, and the raw vulnerability she had witnessed all weighed heavily on her. Yet beneath the lingering fear, a growing connection to him throbbed in her chest, subtle but undeniable. She had barely taken a step into the courtyard when a shadow flickered across her peripheral vision. Her heart skipped a beat, and instinctively she stiffened. The figure moved with a familiar grace, but one Ashley had hoped never to see again. Helena. Her stepmother's eyes glimmered with a mixture of triumph and malice, the same eyes that had threatened Caleb's life, the same eyes that had forced Ashley into a marriage she had never wanted. Helena. Ashley breathed, her voice tight with controlled fear. How did you get in here? Helena's lips curved into a smile, one that sent a shiver down Ashley's spine. Oh, my dear, she said softly, her tone almost mocking. Palaces are filled with doors and secrets, and some of us are more cunning than the guards. Ashley's gaze hardened. What do you want? Helena stepped closer, her presence both magnetic and suffocating. I want to ensure you understand the truth, she said, her voice low, measured. The truth about Rowan, about yourself, and about the price of the loyalty you so blindly swore. Ashley's pulse quickened. I know the price, she said firmly. I swore my loyalty to save Caleb. I will honor it, no matter what. Helena's smile widened, but it carried no warmth. But you don't understand, child. You think you know what you've entered into, but the truth is far more dangerous than you can imagine. Your bloodline, your very essence, is tied to Rowan's curse. It's not just the pack, not just the palace politics, not just loyalty and obedience. If Rowan binds fully to you, if your connection grows, if your love deepens, he may either break free of the curse, or it may kill him. Ashley's breath caught. The words hit her like a physical blow, and her knees threatened to buckle. What do you mean? She whispered, her voice trembling. I'm not cursed. How could I affect him like that? Helena's eyes glimmered with cruel amusement. Blood doesn't lie, and yours carries the mark of the lineage entwined with the very magic that binds him. His strength, his suffering. It is drawn to you. And if you draw too close, if the bond is completed, it could either destroy him or you both. Ashley's hands trembled, clutching at her skirts. Her mind raced, a whirlwind of fear, confusion, and heartbreak. She had felt drawn to Rowan from the moment she had seen him, an attraction that went beyond duty, loyalty, or admiration. And now to learn that her very existence could be his doom tore through her like a dagger. "You're lying," she said, voice rising despite her fear. "You want to scare me, to control me, like you always do." Helena shook her head slowly. "I wish it were a lie, Ashley. But the magic, the curse, and the bloodline do not lie. You have a choice, though. Step away from him. Protect him. Protect yourself. Do not let your feelings for him bring ruin." Ashley's eyes darted to the palace windows, the fading light casting long shadows across the hall. She could almost feel Rowan's presence, the weight of him in the palace even if he was not in the room. The thought of harming him, or allowing harm to come because of her, made her stomach churn. "I can't," she said finally, her voice barely audible. I can't walk away. Not now. Not ever. I swore my loyalty, and Her words faltered as her gaze softened, thinking of the man she had begun to understand, the man who had endured more pain than anyone could imagine, and yet had allowed her glimpses into his world. "I care about him." Helena's lips pressed into a thin line. "Then you will have to bear the consequences, my dear. Every bond has a cost. Every choice has a weight." She leaned closer, her voice dropping into a whisper that chilled Ashley to the bone. "And you must decide quickly, for the boy you saved, for the man you love, and for yourself." Before Ashley could respond, Helena's hand shot out, pressing lightly, but pointedly against her lips in a gesture both intimate and threatening. The act sent a shiver of confusion and anger through Ashley, the audacity of the woman staggering. Helena's lips were near her ear as she whispered, "Think carefully, Ashley. One wrong step, one misplaced feeling, and the consequences will be far worse than mere disobedience." Ashley staggered back, heart hammering, mind spinning. Helena's warning was more than just words. It was a venomous revelation, a threat masked as advice. Her bloodline, her very presence, was entwined with Rowan's suffering. Every glance, every touch, every word spoken in love could be a step toward either freedom or destruction. Shaking, Ashley turned away from her stepmother, refusing to give her the satisfaction of seeing her falter completely. Her fingers tightened around the fabric of her dress as she whispered to herself, "I will not let him die. I will not let this curse define him, or me." The shadows deepened as Helena retreated, leaving Ashley alone with her thoughts and the heavy knowledge of the secret she now bore. Every instinct in her screamed to run, to hide, to protect herself and Caleb from the dangers Helena had revealed. Yet beneath that fear, another force, a mixture of loyalty, desire, and burgeoning love, anchored her firmly in the palace in Rowan's orbit despite the danger. Ashley took a deep breath, closing her eyes for a moment as the words of Helena echoed in her mind. Bloodline, curse, choice, consequence. Each word burned with significance, marking her with a responsibility she had never expected. And yet, in the depth of that responsibility, a determination began to form. Rowan had survived betrayal, curses, and a lifetime of pain. She would not let him face destruction because of her. She would find a way to navigate this deadly bond, to love him without doom, and to protect both him and Caleb from Helena's schemes. The courtyard below began to darken as the last of the sunlight faded, casting a pale silver glow over the palace. Ashley's fingers tightened around the rail of the balcony. She did not know yet how she would overcome the curse or navigate the treacherous balance of love and danger. But one thing was certain. She would face it. She would endure it. She would stand by Rowan, not because she had no fear, but because her heart and loyalty demanded it. And in that silent, moonlit moment, Ashley understood the full weight of what it meant to be bound to the Alpha King, not by chains nor by duty, nor by ceremony, but by blood, curse, and a bond that neither could ignore. The palace had never felt more alive with tension than it did that evening. Shadows stretched across the hallways, dancing in the torchlight as though whispering secrets to one another. Ashley's nerves were on edge, a constant gnawing unease crawling beneath her skin. She had sensed a shift in the atmosphere, an undercurrent of danger she could not yet place, and it pulled her through the corridors like an invisible current. The council had just concluded a late meeting, the murmurs of advisors and nobles echoing through the stone halls. Rowan had dismissed the court with his usual commanding presence, though Ashley had noticed a rare tension in his posture. His silver eyes had scanned the room with a meticulous precision, as if measuring every shadow, every whisper, every potential threat. Ashley had moved closer to him, her hand brushing briefly against his arm, seeking the comfort she had come to crave. It was a small, almost imperceptible gesture, yet she could feel the taut energy in his body respond, subtle but undeniable. Rowan's hand twitched slightly, not in anger but in awareness, as though sensing her presence and the protective instinct it invoked. The tranquility shattered suddenly. A faint clatter echoed from the far end of the hall, followed by a low, menacing hiss. Ashley turned, her heart hammering, and saw the glint of a blade aimed toward Rowan. The motion was swift, silent, almost too quick for anyone else to notice. The attack was calculated, professional, the work of someone trained, someone with lethal intent. Without thinking, Ashley moved. Instinct overrode fear, and she threw herself in front of Rowan, her body twisting as the blade slashed through the air toward her. Pain erupted as the steel grazed her shoulder and she stumbled, her breath catching in her throat. Ashley! Rowan's roar cut through the hall like thunder. His voice, filled with raw, unfiltered emotion, reverberated against the stone walls, silencing the courtiers and servants alike. For the first time, the mask of the controlled, untouchable Alpha fell away, and what remained was pure, primal force. He shifted in his chair with unnatural speed, his movements fluid despite the constraints that had long hidden his strength. In a heartbeat, he was at her side, catching her as she faltered, and the hall seemed to narrow to the space between them. His silver eyes blazed, reflecting the flickering torchlight, and the aura of power around him intensified, a tangible force that made the air itself vibrate. Ashley's breath hitched. She had seen him shift, half curse and half man before, but never so deliberately, so fully, so close. The strength in his arms, the precision of his movements, and the raw intensity in his gaze stripped away any lingering doubts she had about his true capabilities. "You're reckless," he growled, his voice low, dangerous yet threaded with something else. A raw, desperate fear that sent her pulse racing. "Do you understand what you could have done? What you could have cost us?" I couldn't," she began, her words faltering under the weight of his presence. "I couldn't let you die." Rowan's hands tightened on her shoulders, not in anger, but in the possessive intensity of someone who had lost control and was desperate to reclaim it. "Do you understand what you mean to me?" he demanded, his voice breaking slightly under the strain of emotion he rarely allowed to surface. "Do you understand what it would mean if I lost you?" Ashley felt her heart clench, a mixture of fear, longing, and something far deeper stirring in her chest. She started, but words failed her. She had no way to express the depth of her loyalty, her fear, her rising affection for the man who had claimed her in ways both terrifying and thrilling. The attacker lunged again, but Rowan moved with inhuman speed, intercepting the blade with a sweep of his own. The clash of steel rang through the hall, sharp and precise, a testament to the deadly skill Rowan had concealed beneath his calm exterior. The would-be assassin faltered, and Rowan's eyes, blazing silver and filled with fury, locked onto the intruder with the full force of his wrath. Ashley's gaze was fixed on him, and for the first time, she saw the man behind the legend, the Alpha King unmasked, unshielded, vulnerable only in the intensity of his protection for her. His movements were flawless, deadly, and yet threaded with desperation. With every strike, every motion, Every controlled breath screamed of a man who would not allow harm to come to what he had claimed. The assassin collapsed, disarmed and incapacitated, leaving a trail of fear and stunned silence in his wake. Rowan stood tall, his silver eyes still blazing as he turned to Ashley. His chest heaved with effort, his body radiating power and raw emotion, the sheer intensity of his presence leaving the court awed and fearful. Ashley stumbled toward him, her body trembling from the adrenaline, the fear, and the overwhelming relief. Rowan caught her gently, his hands cradling her as though she were both fragile and precious. The heat of his body, the depth of his gaze, and the undeniable force of his presence pressed against her senses, a magnetic pull she could not resist. "You will not endanger yourself again," he said, voice low, almost a growl, yet threaded with something far more intimate, desperation, relief, and something resembling longing. "Do you understand?" Ashley nodded, though her heart beat wildly, not from fear, but from the closeness, the intensity, the undeniable force of their connection. I understand," she whispered, her voice trembling with a mixture of awe and unspoken emotion. Rowan's eyes softened for the briefest moment, but the fire behind them never fully dimmed. "You are mine," he said quietly, not in command, but in affirmation, his hand still cradling her shoulders. "And I will not lose you, not to them, not to anyone." Ashley felt the weight of his words, the truth of them sinking deep into her soul. She had feared her loyalty, her connection, her growing feelings might bring ruin or danger. But in this moment, seeing the man behind the mask, witnessing his strength, his passion, his desperation to protect her, she understood something she had not fully grasped before. Rowan's love, his claim, and his trust were as intense and consuming as the power he wielded. The court, once frozen in shock and awe, began to murmur quietly among themselves. But Ashley barely noticed. She was acutely aware only of Rowan, of the heat of his presence, of the raw power that surrounded him, and the fragile, dangerous bond that now pulsed stronger than ever between them. When he finally released her, stepping back slightly, Ashley felt a tremor of longing mixed with relief. She straightened, brushing at the remnants of fear and adrenaline, and met his gaze squarely. There was no need for words. They had faced danger together, and she had seen the truth of him. She had seen the Alpha unmasked, and in that revelation, she found both awe and desire, loyalty and a dangerous curiosity for the man she was beginning to care for in ways she could neither deny nor fully understand. The flames of danger had passed, but the fire between them had only intensified. The court had gathered once more in the grand hall, the tension from the assassination attempt still lingering like a heavy fog over the marble floors. Courtiers and alphas alike whispered quietly among themselves, exchanging wary glances. Rowan had dismissed the council after the chaos, but their eyes lingered on the young queen, Ashley, who stood poised yet trembling slightly at the center of the room. Ashley's heart raced, not from fear this time, but from the raw, magnetic presence of Rowan. The events of the previous night, the assassination attempt, her narrow escape, and the sight of Rowan's full strength still burned vividly in her memory. Her pulse quickened even now as she felt his gaze settle on her, silver eyes piercing her very soul. He moved toward her slowly, deliberately, each step measured and filled with authority. The hall seemed to shrink around them, the whispers fading until the only sound that mattered was the soft echo of his boots on the polished floor. Ashley's breath caught. She had expected him to speak, to command, perhaps to scold, but Rowan had other intentions. When he stopped just a few feet away, the air between them was charged, heavy with unspoken words and dangerous possibilities. His eyes flicked over her face, lingering on the curve of her jaw, the tense line of her shoulders, the tremor in her fingers. For the first time, Ashley felt truly seen, not as a pawn, not as a protector of Caleb, not as a sacrificial bride, but as something far more intimate and dangerous, the woman he had claimed in body, mind, and now, intention. Rowan's voice was low, resonant, and carried through the hall like a physical force. "Ashley," he said, the single word charged with authority, desire, and warning. "You stand before all, yet I have waited for this moment for longer than you can imagine." Ashley's breath hitched, unsure of what he meant, but instinctively understanding the weight behind his words. Her heart pounded fiercely, the memory of the previous night's terror intertwined with something far more intoxicating, the knowledge that Rowan's attention, his claim, was wholly hers. He stepped closer, close enough that she could feel the heat radiating from him, the subtle tension of muscles beneath his tunic, and the faint, unmistakable scent of him. Iron, smoke, and something darker she could not name. The court seemed to fade around them, leaving only the two of them in a bubble of charged energy, desire, and danger. Without warning, Rowan reached out, his hand brushing against her cheek, and the simple touch sent a jolt through her entire body. His silver eyes softened, a rare flicker of vulnerability hidden beneath layers of control and intensity. "Ashley," he whispered again, this time almost tenderly, "I claim you. Not in ceremony, not in oath alone, but in truth, in desire, in blood and bond. You are mine." The words struck her like lightning. Her breath caught, her knees trembling, and she could not tear her eyes away from his. The court remained silent, stunned, watching as the Alpha King of the realm, paralyzed in form but limitless in power, claimed the young queen before them all. And then, before she could fully process, Rowan closed the distance between them. His lips met hers in a kiss that was at once commanding and intoxicating, claiming and tender. It was not gentle, it was heated, deliberate, and filled with a passion that left Ashley breathless. Every second stretched into an eternity as the kiss deepened. The taste, the warmth, the undeniable connection leaving her trembling. She could feel the tension in his body, the coiled strength, the barely restrained power that had been hidden beneath the mask of the crippled king. Yet in that kiss, there was more than strength. There was trust, a dangerous intimacy, and a declaration that transcended ceremony or oath. He was marking her as his mate, claiming her fully in a way that left no room for doubt. Ashley responded, her hands instinctively moving to rest against his chest, feeling the taut muscles beneath the fabric, the warmth, the heartbeat. Her fear mingled with desire, her loyalty fused with longing, and the realization of what she was experiencing, the forbidden, the dangerous, the utterly consuming, hit her with full force. The court watched in stunned silence, the ceremonial walls echoing with the intensity of their bond. Rowan's lips left hers briefly, just long enough to whisper against her ear, a low, resonant sound that sent shivers through her body. "Do you understand what this means? Our bond, it is not without consequence. One wrong step, one surge of feeling, and the curse may decide its fate. Either I am freed, or I die." Ashley's pulse quickened further, the weight of the truth settling over her like a mantle of fire. Her connection to him, the passion, the bond, they were all dangerously intertwined with the curse that had defined his life for years. Yet in that moment, fear and desire collided within her. She could not step back, could not deny what she felt, even knowing the risks. I understand," she whispered, her voice trembling, filled with both fear and an unspoken craving. I choose you, Rowan. No matter the cost, no matter the curse, no matter anything." Rowan's silver eyes softened briefly, but the intensity remained. He captured her lips again, this time slower, deeper, more consuming. It was a kiss that spoke of ownership, desire, protection, and trust, all at once. Every fiber of her being ached to melt into him, to feel the bond, the connection, the dangerous, intoxicating pull of the alpha she had sworn to serve, yet now, in this moment, loved in a way that terrified and thrilled her. The kiss ended, but the fire between them did not. Rowan's forehead rested against hers, his silver eyes lingering on hers with a mixture of intensity, warning, and a subtle promise of what was to come. The court, still observing, remained silent, but Ashley barely noticed. Her world had narrowed to the space between them, to the heat, the desire, the dangerous connection that had begun with loyalty and oath and now ignited into something far more potent. "You are mine," Rowan said again, quieter this time, more personal, more intimate. "And I will protect you. I will claim you. I will endure this curse if it means keeping you alive, keeping you with me." Ashley's fingers traced the line of his jaw, trembling slightly, and she whispered, "And I am yours. Always." In that moment, the court, the palace, and the weight of duty and politics faded into the background. The forbidden bond had been sealed, not just by oath or ceremony, but by desire, trust, and a dangerous, consuming passion. It was a union that would be tested by the curse, by power, and by betrayal. But for now, it existed in its purest, most intense form. Rowan and Ashley, bound by choice, by danger, and by fire. As the hall settled into an almost reverent silence, Ashley finally stepped back slightly, catching her breath, aware of the heat that still coursed through her veins. Rowan remained close, his presence enveloping her, a constant reminder of the bond they had forged, the passion they had shared, and the danger that still loomed. The night passed quietly after that, but the energy between them lingered, unspoken yet undeniable. Ashley knew that the path ahead was fraught with peril, the curse, Helena's schemes, and the politics of the court. But she also knew that she would face it with Rowan, bound not just by duty, but by something far more dangerous. The forbidden, passionate bond that had ignited that night. The grand hall was alive with whispers and murmurs, the tension inside thick enough to choke even the bravest of alphas. Ashley stood near the center, her hands clenched tightly at her sides, the memory of Rowan's claim still burning across her lips. The earlier passion of their bond had not dulled the unease that now filled the room. Something had shifted, something dangerous was coming, and Ashley could feel it like a chill against her skin. It began subtly, a hush that rippled through the court, followed by murmurs that grew louder, voices straining with incredulity and fear. Courtiers began to rise, pointing, gesturing, whispering accusations. Their eyes were drawn to Ashley as if she were the cause of an invisible calamity. She scanned the room, her stomach tightening, and then she saw her stepmother, Helena, standing at the back of the hall, her presence radiating triumph and malice in equal measure. Helena's voice rang out like a bell, slicing through the chatter. "Behold, the true danger to this kingdom," she proclaimed, her tone sharp, precise, and full of venom. "Ashley, whose bloodline carries the curse that binds the Alpha King, is not merely a wife. She is a witch whose presence will bring ruin upon us all." A collective gasp swept through the court. Nobles clutched their robes, whispering urgently to one another, fear painting their faces as they processed Helena's accusation. The council of alphas seated at the head of the hall leaned forward, their expressions a mix of skepticism, outrage, and calculation. Rowan's eyes, sharp and silver, never left Ashley, but Ashley could feel the tension in the room suffocating her. Ashley stepped forward, her voice trembling but determined. This is a lie," she declared, lifting her chin despite the fear coiling in her stomach. "I am not here to harm anyone. I swore loyalty to Rowan, to protect his people, his pack, and Caleb. I have done nothing to bring ruin to this kingdom." Helena laughed, a sound that was both cold and victorious. "Lies," she sneered, "all lies. Your bloodline is tied to the curse, girl. The very bond that binds the Alpha to you could bring death or destruction. Can you not see? Even your touch, your love, could be the kingdom's undoing." Rowan's eyes narrowed, silver fire igniting behind his calm exterior. Ashley felt the shift in his presence immediately, the subtle hum of power that had always been restrained, now flaring like a warning storm. He rose slowly from his chair, the full weight of his stature and presence filling the hall. Every whisper fell silent as the Alpha King stepped forward, radiating authority, strength, and something more, a dangerous, protective intensity. "Silence," Rowan commanded, his voice low, resonant, and cutting through the tension like steel. "All of you who dare question her loyalty, her worth, or the bond we share, hear me now. Ashley is mine. Mine by blood, by oath, and by the claim I have made. And if any of you would threaten her, you threaten me, and I will not allow this kingdom or anyone in it to harm her." A murmur ran through the nobles, some bristling with anger, others with fear. Helena's eyes flared, the smirk on her face faltering just slightly under Rowan's sheer presence. She had counted on the court's fear of the curse to turn them against Ashley, to force Rowan into submission. But Rowan's defiance was absolute, unyielding, and terrifying. Ashley's heart raced, a mixture of fear, admiration, and a burgeoning desire she could no longer deny. She had seen the depths of Rowan's power before, had felt the pull of his intensity during their first bond and the events of the assassination attempt. But now, facing the court, seeing him defend her so fiercely, she understood the full extent of his resolve. He would burn the kingdom to protect her if he had to, and the knowledge sent both heat and terror coursing through her veins. "You would defy the council?" one of the elder alphas demanded, his voice quivering slightly as he leaned forward. "You would risk the stability of the kingdom for a woman?" Rowan's silver eyes flashed with fury. "I would risk my life, my throne, and everything in this kingdom for her," he said, voice low but firm, each word deliberate and weighted. "Ashley is not a threat. She is not a witch. She is my mate, and she has my trust. You will not question her again." Ashley took a tentative step forward, emboldened by Rowan's words, though fear still coiled in her chest. "I am not your enemy," she said, her voice stronger now, steadier than she had expected. "I have never been, and I will never be. Rowan has trusted me, and I will honor that trust in every way I can. I stand with him, not against this kingdom." Helena's face darkened, her triumphant stance wavering. "You dare defy me, girl?" she hissed. "Do you not see the danger you bring? The Alpha is bound to you by magic and blood, and yet you flaunt your ignorance and arrogance like a shield." Rowan stepped even closer to Ashley, placing a possessive hand on her shoulder. The subtle touch sent a shockwave through the hall, the court feeling the unspoken warning in the movement. Rowan's body tensed, ready, not just to defend her, but to unleash the full force of his power, if anyone dared challenge him further. Ashley swallowed hard, her eyes meeting Rowan's silver gaze. In that instant she knew that no one, neither Helena nor the council nor any of the nobles, would sway him. His love, his claim, and his loyalty were absolute. And as terrifying as that realization was, it was also intoxicating. She felt a surge of courage, of belonging, and of desire, knowing that she stood by a man who would protect her with every ounce of strength he possessed. Helena finally turned, frustration flaring in her eyes, and stormed toward the exit. Her schemes had failed for now, but Ashley knew better than to think the war was over. Helena would return, plotting, manipulating, and striking at the first opportunity. Rowan released Ashley slightly, though his gaze never wavered from her. He lowered his voice, a low, intimate growl meant only for her ears. "Do you understand?" he asked, silver eyes softening just enough for a glimpse of vulnerability beneath the intensity. "I will not let anyone harm you. Not now, not ever. You are mine, and nothing, not curse, not counsel, not stepmother, will take you from me." Ashley nodded, her chest rising and falling with a mixture of relief and excitement. "I understand," she whispered, "and I will stand with you, Rowan. Always." The court remained in stunned silence, the magnitude of Rowan's declaration echoing through the marble halls. For the first time, no one dared challenge the Alpha King, not Helena, not the council, not even the whispers of fear. The bond between him and Ashley had been sealed not just by words or ceremony, but by the force of his defiance, his claim, and the undeniable power of their connection. Ashley's hand brushed against Rowan's as he stepped back, a silent, reassuring touch that spoke volumes. She felt the fire of their bond ignite once more, hotter, deeper, and far more dangerous than ever before. The kingdom might whisper, plot, or fear, but Ashley knew the truth. She belonged to Rowan, and he would not let her go. And in that moment, standing together before the court, Ashley understood fully the depth of what they shared: love, loyalty, power, and a passion that defied the very threats Helena sought to impose. The palace, once a sanctuary of stone and shadowed corridors, erupted into chaos as the first flickers of fire licked the high ceilings. Smoke coiled like a living thing through the grand halls, carrying the acrid scent of betrayal. Ashley's heart pounded in her chest as she darted from one corridor to the next, searching for Caleb, her stepbrother, whose safety had always been the anchor of her resolve. The night air was thick with shouts, clanging steel, and the frantic cries of palace guards who were no match for the precision of the traitor's strike. Every step Ashley took brought her closer to the heart of the rebellion, yet the fear gnawed at her relentlessly. She had known Helena's cunning, but never could she have imagined the depth of her stepmother's treachery. Helena was no longer content with whispers and manipulation. She sought total destruction. "Caleb!" Ashley's voice rang through the chaos as she sprinted down a smoke-filled hallway. Her eyes caught glimpses of overturned chairs, shattered glass, and flickering torches that cast monstrous shadows against the walls. "Where are you?" From the edge of her vision, movement, a flash of dark robes, caught her attention. She pursued it instinctively, only to stumble into the figure she had hoped never to see again. Helena, standing atop the staircase, her eyes gleaming with triumph. "You really thought loyalty could protect anyone here?" Helena called down, her voice cutting through the din like a dagger. "This palace, your precious Alpha, your stepbrother, all yours to lose. And tonight, Ashley, you will understand the consequences of defiance." Ashley's chest tightened. "Helena, stop this. Caleb is innocent." Helena's laugh rang hollowly in the burning hall. "Innocent?" she hissed. "Innocence doesn't matter when the bloodline itself threatens the Alpha King. You were always the key, Ashley. And now you will watch everything you love burn." Suddenly, a violent crash echoed from the main hall. Guards and courtiers fell back as Rowan appeared, his chair abandoned, the air around him charged with silver fire. The curse that had bound him in torment for so long was rising now, responding to the danger, responding to Ashley, responding to betrayal. Ashley's breath caught as she saw him, no longer restrained by weakness, standing fully, every sinew of his body taut with power. The air shimmered around him, and even through the smoke and chaos, his silver eyes blazed with the intensity of a predator fully unleashed. "Where is he?" Rowan's voice rumbled, low and dangerous. "Where is Caleb?" Ashley spun, pointing toward the shadowed hall where the boy had been dragged. Her voice trembled. "They took him. Helena. She betrayed us completely. She—" Rowan's silver eyes snapped toward the figure on the staircase. Helena's expression faltered, but only briefly, before she gave a sharp motion to the hidden guards around her. In an instant, she disappeared into the smoke and flames, dragging herself away from Rowan's full wrath. "No!" Rowan's roar shattered the air. He moved with impossible speed, every muscle in his body coiling and releasing like a living weapon. The chains of his curse, long hidden and suppressed, broke with a thunderous crack. Pain flared across his limbs, but he did not falter. The Alpha King who had endured betrayal, who had lived as half-shifted and restrained, now unleashed the full fury of his power. Ashley stumbled back, watching as Rowan's body began to shift subtly, the familiar signs of the curse reacting violently. His muscles tensed, silver light flickering along his skin, claws extending, eyes blazing. Yet beneath the monstrous transformation, there was control, a deadly absolute control fueled by fury and love, a precision that no ordinary warrior could command. "Rowan, stop!" Ashley cried, her voice nearly drowned by the roaring fire and chaos around them. "The palace! Caleb, please!" He paused. silver eyes meeting hers. And in that moment, Ashley saw everything. The Alpha, the King, the cursed man who had claimed her. The intensity of his gaze, the raw power coursing through him, and the desperation to save Caleb all converged in a single unspoken message. He would stop at nothing. Ashley bolted forward, weaving through the chaos, the heat of the flames brushing against her skin, and caught sight of Caleb, bound and struggling, his small hands pressed against ropes that cut into his wrists. The boy's wide eyes met hers, a mix of fear and hope reflecting the trust he had always placed in her. "Caleb!" Ashley shouted, sprinting to him, her hands frantically tearing at the ropes. The fire roared closer, the heat nearly unbearable, yet her focus never wavered. She could feel Rowan's presence behind her, a living wall of power and protection, felling anyone who dared cross his path. The rebels' attacks grew more desperate, but Rowan met them with precision and force. Every strike, every movement was a controlled hurricane, his curse-fueled strength devastating in its beauty and terror. Courtiers and guards alike fell back, awe and fear mingling as they witnessed the Alpha King in full fury. Ashley finally freed Caleb, pulling him into her arms, cradling him against her chest. His small body trembled, but he clung to her, trusting her instinctively. She looked up at Rowan, who had cleared a path toward them, his silver eyes blazing with a mix of rage and concern. "You are safe now," he said, voice low, controlled yet carrying the tremor of unleashed power. "I will not let anyone harm you." Ashley swallowed hard, her chest heaving. "We must stop Helena," she whispered, her voice trembling with exhaustion and fear. "She's behind all of this." Rowan's gaze shifted to the shadows where Helena had vanished. His silver eyes narrowed, a dangerous calm settling over him. "She will pay," he said, every word dripping with the promise of retribution. "No one betrays me, no one harms what I claim, and no one threatens this kingdom under my watch." Ashley felt the heat of his presence, the sheer intensity of his bond with her, and the knowledge that Rowan had risked everything, including his own life, to protect her and Caleb. Her heart pounded with a mix of fear, awe, and something deeper, a connection that went beyond loyalty or obligation. It was the unspoken promise of a bond that had survived betrayal, fire, and curse. As the last of the smoke and flames began to settle, the palace lay in ruin, but Rowan stood unbroken, every ounce of his power radiating control, fury, and protection. Ashley held Caleb close, her hands trembling, yet her spirit strengthened by the knowledge that together they had endured the storm. Rowan stepped toward them, the firelight catching the silver glow in his eyes. He reached out, a subtle, possessive gesture that Ashley understood completely. "We are not done," he said quietly, the weight of his words pressing into her very soul. "But for now, we endure. Together." Ashley nodded, her gaze meeting his. She felt the full gravity of the events, the betrayal, the loss, the fire, but also the unwavering strength of Rowan's presence. Whatever challenges lay ahead, the bond between them had proven unbreakable, forged in fire, blood, and survival. The palace may have been scarred, the traitors may have struck, and Helena's betrayal may have run deep. But in that moment, Rowan, Ashley, and Caleb stood together, unyielding, and ready to face whatever darkness still lingered. The palace lay in ruin, smoke curling from shattered windows and scorched stone. The echoes of battle had faded, leaving an eerie stillness in their wake. Ash and soot coated the once grand hallways, and the scent of blood and fire mingled in the air like a cruel reminder of the cost of betrayal. Ashley stood in the center of the throne room, clutching Caleb's hand, her heart pounding in her chest. The boy's wide, frightened eyes mirrored her own fear, yet also the fragile spark of hope that had survived the chaos. Behind her, Rowan knelt, his silver eyes glowing faintly, his body battered but still radiating an aura of lethal power. The full extent of the curse's toll was visible now. The half-shift had taken its price. His limbs trembled, his chest heaved with effort, and faint silver scars traced along his arms and neck, glowing with residual magic. Rowan looked at her with an intensity that pierced through the smoke and chaos, his voice low but commanding. "Ashley, the curse. It can only be broken by your blood," he said, his words heavy with the weight of fate and consequence. "If you do not choose, I will be lost. If you bind yourself to me, we endure. Together. But it is permanent. You will be mine in body, soul, and blood forever." Ashley's breath caught. She had known this moment would come, had felt the undercurrent of the curse's danger for weeks, yet nothing had prepared her for the absolute clarity of Rowan's eyes, the palpable tension between life and death, power and love, desire and duty. Her gaze fell on Caleb, who clutched her hand tightly, silent yet pleading in the only way a child could. Rowan's silver eyes flicked to the boy as well, the protective instinct in him raw and immediate. Ashley knew she had to make her choice quickly, not just for Rowan, but for Caleb, the kingdom, and the fragile bond they had fought so desperately to preserve. "I choose love," Ashley whispered, her voice trembling yet unwavering. "I choose you, Rowan. Always." Rowan's eyes softened briefly, though the intensity never left them. He reached toward her, taking both of her hands in his, and Ashley felt the pulse of magic radiate through him. The air around them shimmered, charged with the raw energy of the curse, the bond, and the life force of the one who claimed him. Ashley took a deep breath, drawing a small ceremonial dagger from the ceremonial table that had survived the fire. With precise, deliberate motion, she cut her palm, letting crimson blood well up and drip between her fingers. Rowan's gaze never wavered. He lowered his hands, allowing her blood to flow into his cupped palms. The magic sparked immediately, a silver fire erupting around them, wrapping them in a cocoon of energy that neither heat nor smoke could penetrate. Rowan's silver eyes blazed brighter than ever, his half-shifted form stabilizing as the curse reacted to Ashley's blood. Pain, ecstasy, and relief coalesced in a violent pulse, and Ashley felt the raw connection solidify, a tether of life, magic, and love binding them irrevocably. Rowan's lips found hers in a kiss that was both triumphant and tender, consuming and intimate. It was a kiss that spoke of victory and sacrifice, of fire and blood, of a bond forged in struggle and sealed in choice. Ashley wrapped her arms around him, feeling the tremor of his body beneath her hands, the surge of power that had once terrified her, now tempered by trust, love, and shared determination. The traitors, seeing the Alpha fully restored, faltered in fear. Rowan's presence alone radiated a force that left them trembling, weapons dropping uselessly to the floor. Ashley's eyes scanned the room, and she saw Helena attempting to flee through the shattered windows, her expression twisted in rage and disbelief. Rowan's hand, still glowing faintly with silver energy, shot out with inhuman speed, grasping Helena by the arm. "You dared betray your own family," Rowan said, voice low and dangerous, silver eyes flashing with lethal intensity. "You sought to destroy what I claim. Your schemes end here." Helena's defiance crumbled under his gaze. She struggled, but Rowan's grip was unyielding. Ashley, still holding Caleb, felt a strange sense of justice in seeing Helena brought low. The stepmother who had manipulated, threatened, and schemed for years was now powerless before them. The traitors fell one by one, routed by Rowan's strength and the newfound magic coursing through him. There was no mercy for those who had sought to destroy the Alpha and the kingdom, and their screams echoed as Rowan's power asserted the final judgment. Ashley, still trembling from the ritual, finally lowered her hands, letting Rowan cradle her in his arms. The bond, now fully sealed, hummed between them like a living thing, a constant reminder of the choice she had made and the life they would share. "You are mine," Rowan whispered, his voice soft now, almost intimate. "And I am yours. Forever." Ashley rested her forehead against his chest, her fingers tracing the contours of his arms, feeling both strength and vulnerability. "And I am yours," she replied, the words carrying the weight of truth, sacrifice, and unshakable devotion. "I am yours, Rowan. All of me." The hall, once a battlefield of fire, blood, and betrayal, was now quiet. Caleb stood close, still holding her hand, watching the bond between his sister and the Alpha. Ashley turned to him, kneeling slightly to meet his gaze. "It's over," she whispered. "We're safe now." The young boy's eyes filled with tears of relief, and he hugged her tightly. Ashley felt a surge of love, not just for Rowan, but for the family she had fought to protect. Rowan, still holding her, glanced down at Caleb, a flicker of warmth breaking through the aura of lethal power around him. With the final traitors defeated, and Helena taken away to face her inevitable punishment, Ashley understood the magnitude of what had transpired. She was no longer merely a pawn or a sacrificial bride. She was not just Rowan's mate. She was the Luna, the true queen of the kingdom, bound in fire, blood, and love. Her choices had secured not just her bond with Rowan, but the safety and stability of the realm itself. Rowan lowered her gently to the floor, holding her close, his silver eyes scanning the room, the palace, and the remnants of chaos. "The kingdom is ours now," he said quietly, the first hints of relief threading his voice. "And we face whatever comes together. Always." Ashley smiled, exhausted yet exhilarated. She had chosen love, chosen loyalty, and chosen to seal their bond in fire and blood. For the first time she felt whole, not just as a queen, not just as a protector, but as a woman who had fought, survived, and claimed her place beside the Alpha she loved. The palace may have been scarred, the enemies vanquished, and the fires smoldering, but in the aftermath, Ashley stood with Rowan, Caleb close at her side, and the bond between her and the Alpha King stronger than any curse, stronger than any threat, and unbreakable. The kingdom had survived. The traitors were gone. Helena had met her end. And Ashley was no longer just a bride. She was the Luna, the Alpha's mate, and the heart of the kingdom's new dawn. Thank you, untamed hearts, for staying till the end. The story pauses, but the fire never dies. Here in Tales by Jenny Moon, the hunt only waits for the next night. If you survived this chapter, step deeper. Share your presence with the pack, so it knows who dares to return. Now that the journey has ended, what's your final thought on this story? Share it in the comments. I'm curious how it made you feel. The night never sleeps, and neither do the things within it. Rest if you must. Keep the moon close. And if you feel eyes on you, or a whisper at your door, don't panic. It's only a story, until the moon finds you.